Some of you might like to know a little bit more about our drummer.
Now going back to 40 years of Chick Webb.
Get that.
Is drummer right? Is it okay to say drummer?
Pounding his pulsing beat into the hearts of all America.
You motherfuckers are fucking all over this joint.
You do your kind of drumming, and I'll do my kind of drumming.
I have no more time. You don't know what I love again.
The only things I care about in this goddamn life are me and my drums and you.
The official explanation is he choked on vomit.
You suppose maybe I could put the drums in your place and sort of drop in once in a while?
Now back to Gene Krupa's syncopated style shortly.
Get up there behind those drums, lean back, close your eyes, get right in the groove there, give it a good steady beat.
I got blisters on my fingers.
I'd hit that.
I'm in New York City with Shawn Pelton. Shawn, thanks for having me over, man.
Oh, Dave, man, this is really exciting for me to be a part of this. And I was listening to some of the podcasts, and it's amazing what you're doing. Like James Gadsden and Hal Blaine and Josh and JoJo, man, and Mark Julian, all these cats, Kenny. It's like, like the James Gadsden, Hal Blaine, that kind of stuff with those kind of veterans. This feels like that should go up into the space capsule.
And you probably know these cats too, right?
Well, I've met some of those guys once or twice. I'm not sure they remember, but I mean, I know Kenny really well, and definitely, JoJo and.
Well, you studied with Kenny, right?
Yeah. We'll have to get into that. That was wild. But hey, first things first. So you're gonna help me out here with this tequila tasting. I got 3 of these. Let's try some of this stuff, and then let's start talking about drums.
This is a courtesy of. Do we want to mention?
Well, I guess these are
a clink for the. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Cheers.
These are 3 different tequilas that were part of this New York Times taste test thing.
That's nice.
And I'm always into tasting things and trying to figure out if I can tell the difference with a blindfold on. It's funny when, this studio that we're in, when I tried to pull it together, I went through a lot of that with microphones and mic pre's and all different stuff. And, tried to put a blindfold on myself to see, what am I really feeling from this? Does this sound better, or does it just cost 10 times as much, And that was a really interesting journey. Okay, so now that was Casa Noble. Now this is the Patron, which sort of, everybody can get it, but it was in the top 10.
This guy here?
Yeah. So I thought we should try it. Now it describes itself as, what does this say? The first one was rough, rustic, and intense with earthy, spicy, vegetal, and saline flavors that explode from the glass. Now, saline, does that mean if you drink contact solution, it's going to taste like...
It's a bit of saline solution. I think I like the first one.
Me too, man. Now, let's see. Then, number 3 is this Milagro one. What does it say about it?
Oh, yeah, I see this one. Got a nice bottle, man.
Yeah. Pure and unalloyed vegetal and mineral flavors that are complex and concentrated. So now, unalloyed vegetal versus alloyed vegetal.
That's beautiful.
I wonder what that would be, the difference. When they describe stuff like saddle leather and horse's crack, that's wild. And they talk about it sometimes like you're supposed to like drinking saddle leather. So, cheers.
Cheers, man. This is great.
Yeah. Well, so should we start at the beginning?
I tend to jump around, but if we can absolutely go in chronological order, if you want to do it that way, we can do that.
I don't know. I guess we'll start a little bit at the beginning, but anytime you want to jump around, we'll jump.
All right, let's do it, man.
Well, let's see. Grew up kind of Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, mostly in Missouri, a small town. It's a town called Warrensburg, which is like 50 miles east of Kansas City. And it was kind of lucky that what saved it from being just a cornfield was that Central Missouri State University was there. And
Well, did you grow up on a farm?
No, because my mother taught at the school, so it was kind of like one of those small colleges in Missouri. And so, she was a teacher there, and what was lucky about that was just that they had like kind of a music program, in Missouri at least, that, the college there. And so I felt like that was a lucky thing to be around that environment. I took lessons there at the university and stuff when I was coming up. And but it's interesting, when in my town, like you had to be. It was back when music was required, so you had to be in either orchestra or band. And then our class was small; it had like 13 or 14 people in it, and so all the guys were like trying to be too cool to. At that point, you were supposed to be into basketball and football and stuff, and so none of us really wanted to do the music thing, although I always wanted to be a drummer. But this thing was, if you were in band, you had to actually commit and buy an instrument. And then if you were in orchestra, they'd give you something, So me and my friend, and we used to play football and stuff together in junior high. It's like, I'll play cello. And because then we don't have to buy an instrument. They'll give it to us, and that'll show them that we're really not into it.
That's right.
We're tough guys,
Yeah.
But I always wanted to play drums, and so anyway, so after about a year of the cello thing, I finally decided, man, I got to stop this because I really want to go to band and play. And the orchestra director was this guy, Hugh Williams, older cat, and a really intense dude, sort of. He's like, man, you just want to go dress up in a tiger taming outfit, like a marching band outfit, and run around the football field and do this. I said, oh, yes, sir. Just let me go, please, So then I got to go into band, and I remember making little practice pads out of Folger coffee can lids, like the plastic part, after you open up the metal part.
Sure.
And nailing it to some wood. And then, when we had those 2B drumsticks, when you started out, everybody got either 2B or 5B, I can't remember. And it was fun, man. So I was glad to finally be in band, and saved up some money and got a drum set from the Ike Martin music store. I used to do a paper route, so and it was a Maxitone drum kit in silver sparkle. And my mother still has a receipt from that kit. It was like $220.
What happened to the kit?
I gave it to a friend of mine once we went into high school, and then we recovered it and like took the bottom lugs off, because back then that was kind of like the late 70s.
Oh, you wanted to get like concert toms?
Yeah, because everybody was using the single-headed toms, so we kind of like took it apart and took the bottom heads off and then recovered it in some kind of white wrap.
You were doing the Hal Blaine thing.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, I'm a big fan of his as well. And but I had got my next drum set, which was a black Slingerland, that kind that was black chrome, it wrapped in the metal, Man, I love that drum kit, man. That was a cool drum. That black chrome was so badass. And what was lucky, though, about that time was, I got to study with the guy at the percussion department at the university, and, so I got exposed to kind of mallets and all the whole percussion thing. And, but I was able to start working in a band at a really young age. And we used to go around Missouri, like Sedalia, and go to Kansas City and the different things. And
what was the scene like in Kansas City?
Well, I was kind of young, but I did used to go up and go to jam sessions. They had a thing at the Musicians Union there, and there's a lot of history there with the Blue Devils.
That's what I'm saying. Like, what was going on at that point?
So, it was still kind of happening a little bit, but it was kind of a shadow of what it was. But I remember getting to do some gigs with Carmel Jones, he was a great trumpet player that had moved to Europe, and he came back, and having those kind of experiences were amazing. Getting to play with him, and I remember learning from him, like ending the song with conviction. Like we'd do a song, and I remember maybe it was even a ballad or something. I thought, okay, the brushes, and we're gonna be sensitive and stuff. But he wanted the ending to have a big kind of some drama to it. And I remember turning around and saying, man, come on, when we end the tune, we got to really put some heat on that. They're stressing the crowd out. They don't know if it's over or not. So that got me started.
No hesitation.
Yeah, commit. And I love that. I love that story.
And how old are you at this point, by the way?
I guess this was like 15, 14, 16, all of that. I started, and
And you're playing with older cats.
Yeah, and
how's that work at playing in bars and everything? How's that work?
Well, a lot of it was kind of like VFW halls and stuff like that, and private parties. And there were some bars, and as long as I was with adults, it all ended up working out. I got hassled, but I remember joining the union and there was a Sedalia Musicians Union there, and being a part of that. And another lucky thing was, my mother was always really supportive, which was great. It was just, my parents were divorced, so I was sort of raised with her, by her, alone, and I got to go to one of those Berklee School of Music, like summer programs, and that was the first time. I guess I was a junior. It was between my junior and senior year in high school. It was the first time, like, I kind of got exposed to the East Coast and realized that there was such a huge world outside of. And man, once I was exposed to that, it was like, oh God, I got to get out of Missouri. I got to get out of Missouri. I got to get out of this town, because it was such a. Felt like a small scene. And
was it a fusion-y kind of scene at Berklee at that point?
Well, it was interesting. Yeah, the Berklee thing at that point was, because it was this summer program for high school kids.
I did the same thing, by the way.
Oh,
I
cool.
know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, back then, maybe it was the same when you were there, but it felt like there were a lot of kids that were into electric guitar, and then their parents were kind of like, okay, let me get you out of the house for 6 weeks and go do this. And so, it felt like it was like 50 guitar players to every one jazz cat that was trying to do the jazz thing, and the guitar cats were all into just the metal.
So
thing.
You were trying to do the jazz thing.
Yeah, because
that's where your head was at.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you come up in the States playing, like, in school and stuff, it's like, if you're interested in drum set, you sort of end up being in the jazz band,
Sure.
And then that sort of leads, like, I was lucky enough to go to those, a couple of those Stan Kenton camps that he used to do in the summer, because he would do them in Springfield, Missouri.
Oh, yeah.
And man, that was such a blast.
Erskine did that, right?
Yeah, when I was going, Gary Hobbs was the drummer, and man, Weckel was at one of those things. I'll never forget him. He's a little bit older than I am, but and he was incredible then, And I remember, even at that young age, it was amazing. I remember just kind of sitting there in awe, and Gary Hobbs even saying to the group of drummers, like, we'd have these master classes every day, like, this guy's gonna go on and be, like, incredible,
Yeah.
And then he did, so.
Sure.
But he was from St. Louis, I guess, originally, and so that's why he was down in Springfield, Missouri, these things. But anyway, all those experiences were really lucky, because I was really hungry to learn just anything I could, and then.
So you knew, though. I mean, before you even did the Berklee thing, you were like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, it felt right, man, from the beginning. It really did. It felt like I loved it so much, and it was wild, coming up, like, what the exposure of what we were all listening to, because like, my mother was really into Al Green and Motown, and then all sorts of stuff, and then, but, like, the first song I probably learned to play drums to in the basement was Day Tripper, I think, like the Beatles stuff. And then, Bad Company and Grand Funk Railroad and all that kind of stuff, and then classic kind of 70s rock. But then also because of the whole jazz path, if you're, like, hungry to learn and you're in the jazz band in high school and stuff, that kind of set me down that path. And I got to go to one of the Aebersold camps and, these Ken things, and the thing at Berklee. So that set me into the whole, Charlie Parker, and, oh man, there's Roy Haynes, and then Billy Higgins with Cedar Walton's trio, and all this stuff. And I used to drive around. I had a Galaxy 500 that was used, and, we had these cassette players. It would be like Train at the Vanguard, but, like, that's what I was riding around Missouri listening to, because I had to get out of Missouri, man, But it was such a wide exposure of different stuff, and then I felt also lucky that I was gigging, I just wasn't, like, in the basement. I never went through kind of a fusion or prog rock phase, because I was kind of like, there was the jazz thing, and then gigging, and then the kind of classic rock thing, but never really the whole fusion thing.
The chops thing.
Which is kind of a blind spot for me, the chopsy thing, and the odd times thing and all that. I don't really have a handle on that.
Well, I guess things worked out. I mean, it's not.
Amen. Yeah. So, man, Warrensburg, and then I had to get out there, and
So what did you think of Berkeley, though? You were saying, were you like, this is not my thing?
I guess I was too young and awestruck to even know and make a judgment call, and I just kind of was just hungry to learn. And then, I really loved Boston, and I loved the feeling of a big town in the East Coast, and it just felt like, man, it's such a big world out here, and there's so many cats, and I was so glad that I was just exposed to that early, But so what was lucky then at, having access to like the music school there at the university was, studying with the percussion instructor. And so it was like, well, where are we going to, I want to go to music school. And so we put an audition thing together, and it was like, the whole thing with getting in music schools back then was you kind of had to, like, jazz programs were there, but they were sort of just starting out. And Indiana University was it was sort of a well-known music school, and it was a public school, so it was going to be cheaper than Eastman and some of these other things. And so I ended up trying to apply to there, and George Gaber, who's this legendary kind of percussion guy that he worked at the NBC Orchestra maybe in New York, had a big career in New York, and then went and started this program there. And like Erskine came out of there, and Jeff Hamilton and Kenny Aronoff went there, and there's been a lot of people come out of that program that have, had some things happen in a good way. And so I sent this audition in, which was sort of like a hardcore percussion audition, like with timpani and marimba and different stuff and some drum set, and got accepted, and that was really a thrill to get in. But I decided to be a jazz major, and because I love the drum set and wanted to do that. But what was interesting about this would have been 81, Indiana University, they had a jazz program, but they didn't have a drum set teacher at that time. And now, like, Steve Houghton's there, and he really does a great job there, man. They're so lucky to have him, and the whole percussion faculty there at IU is really strong. But back then, it was just a couple guys teaching the percussion thing, and George was the big presence as the head of the department, and no real drum set teacher. So I really got lucky. Those first two summers that I was there, I got to study with Alan Dawson. And that was such a thrill, man, and it really changed my life. Because I was so into Tony and loved all that stuff. And I had an ex-girlfriend in high school that her her sister's father-in-law, lived in North Billerica, which is a suburb of Boston. And so I was able to stay with him, and the whole deal was, if I mow the yard and clean up the house and stuff, I can kind of stay there. And he worked all day in Boston, and then I could study with Alan. And that just changed my life, the Alan Dawson thing, exposed to that, because he was so amazing at laying a foundation for just kind of technically and no bullshit, and let's get your shit together on these basic levels. His lessons were built around it's like 3-part lessons. It'd be 60-minute lesson, and the first 20 minutes would be, he'd focus on 3 rudiments, and kind of slow to fast, open to close and back, and then you had to do it with brushes too. And then that famous thing, the ritual, that I guess is all these rudiments, then you had to memorize it, and you had to play it over a pattern, bass drum pattern, like a, boom, chick, boom, boom, chick, you had to play these rudiments, all these rudiments, and he wanted you to memorize it. And then he did the whole thing with the stick control book, but between the feet and the hands, and then the syncopation book. And then what was so cool about the syncopation book was it was just those rhythms, everybody knows the syncopation book. And then he had all these concepts that he would apply to it, like for independence and stuff. And then the last part of the lesson would be jamming with him on the vibes. So he'd play the vibes, and then you'd play with him. And but it was such a grounding thing, and everybody that's ever been exposed to it, they know what I'm talking about. He was just such a great cat. And I remember asking, man, how does Tony, because I was transcribing stuff from 4 and More and stuff. So how does Tony do that stuff on the ride cymbal with the 5 notes in a row, like, how's he doing that, man, at those tempos? And I would be like, I don't think you should be concerned about it, worrying about that, man. We got to get this other shit together, And it was right. He was right. And it's funny, going full circle, Bradley's, this is no longer here, but it was a great piano bar and stuff, and Alan was here playing, and it's actually right around the corner. It was on University Place in 12th or something, and a big hangout, for jazz people. And when I got the job at SNL, I bought him this jacket, it said SNL, and I went down to see him and said, man, I just want you to have this as a gift, because you know, I really appreciate all that shit you gave to me, you know. And it was so wild. I went to the Zildjian factory, maybe like 20 years later, because he had passed away, and then I saw a photo of him there at the Zildjian factory. He had that jacket, and I was like, oh shit, he's working for the SNL thing, you know. But I've been really lucky to have some great teachers. The fucking Alan and Kenny and these people, man, that gave so much. And I was, you know, I was really hungry to learn, but man, without those cats that were willing to give all that that they had in that way, it was really, you know, inspiration for sure.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, but so you know, those 2 summers with Alan, that was so influential, and then David Baker, who was head of the jazz department, was another guy that like I begged him to give me some lessons because they didn't have a drum set teacher, and that was really influential too, because it was this idea of taking lessons from somebody that wasn't a drummer. It was somebody who's always on the other side of drums and the recipient of what you're doing, you know. So it was so cool. Like, you know, David would hear you play and he goes, you know, man, the thing that cats are gonna feel is your feel on the ride cymbal and what you're doing there, and it's all this other shit going on is cool, but you've really got to pull this thing together with your feel in your right hand, you know. And we went through all the different drummers. Like, we'd take a month on Kenny Clark, and then we'd go to Elvin, and then, you know, Tony and Roy and Art Blakey, and it was so cool to take lessons from somebody that wasn't a drummer, and it really opened my eyes up to, you know, some shit that you never learn with, you know, from drummers. Like when you take lessons from other cats that play other instruments that are on the receiving end of what you're doing, you know, it's really insightful. And then the other thing that was so incredible then about Bloomington was, because there wasn't a drum set teacher, you know, Kenny Aronoff was there, and he had graduated like 10 years earlier, and man, he was like a percussion star. Like, he won the concerto competition at that school, like on marimba and stuff, and he was a prize student at Gabers, and, you know, got the performer certificate, all this stuff, man. And
this is pre-Mellencamp.
It was right when Mellencamp was started. It was right when Jack and Diane and all that stuff started to explode, you know.
Okay.
And man, and he's another cat that was just so giving, you know. And so I was hanging with him and taking lessons, and then he was always really hungry to play, and like when he was in town, he'd go play you know, any kind of gig, and pick up gigs, and I'd go help him with his gear, you know. And I was just being around him was so inspiring, and it was wild, you know. This is way before he started doing all the records and becoming like the doing all the stuff that he ended up doing as a great session player, you know. And seeing him kind of deal with those things. I mean, I remember him telling me stories about how Mellencamp said, hey man, because, you know, he was kind of I even listened to his podcast. He mentions like kind of, you know, when you're coming up, and he was into Cobham and that whole thing, and then that they said, hey man, here's a stack of Creedence records, and which is so interesting. He's playing Fogerty now, you know. I love it. And
true, yeah.
And Stones records and all this stuff, and like you got to cut out 80% of your playing, man. And you know, so to hear him talk about like dealing with those kind of issues and coming full circle with that, I mean, I learned so much about, you know, drummers cross this bridge where you can, you know, drums are such a transparent instrument. You can feel, you know, someone's heart from behind the drums, like, and this idea of falling in love with like playing simply is a real interesting bridge, because there's so many cats that you can kind of feel instantly like, man, what is this dumb shit? This, you know, it's the same beat I learned when I first started playing. I'm onto some different shit, man. You know, groups of 7s and 9s and all that, and which is, it's great shit, believe me. Right. I sure the fuck can't do it, but it's great shit. But it's interesting, this idea, like, you know, when Kenny was having to deal with believing in playing really simply, and like, you know, people feel a drummer's spirit and their heart in all sorts of different situations, and you know, his whole thing was wanting to project to the back row of a stadium, you know, on these tours, and like just the physicality of that, and he got such a big ass sound, you know, and working on that then, and that kind of style is very physical, and being around that and seeing that, and also this was the 80s when, like, you know, everybody kind of lost their mind and the snare drum was the loudest thing in the mix, you know what I mean? And you know what I mean, like you'll listen to Born in the US, Power, Prince records, and you know, some of that stuff, I mean, it's cool, but it's just it's that stamp of that era, you know, where like the snare drum is like sometimes the loudest shit. So, you know, people were playing that way in that time, like, you know, trying to cop the whole drum machine thing that was happening and the in-your-face mixes of the snare drum being so loud. So anyway, seeing him hit like that and being around it was like, you know, really a life changer. And his...
Because you had a light jazz touch at that point?
Yeah, I was so... Like, you know, I love Billy Higgins and all those cats.
Were you tradish?
Nah, I didn't play traditional grip. I played Brush's traditional grip, but I didn't really, you know.
Okay.
And that's a whole nother debate, right? The traditional grip thing. It's so interesting. So being around him was just incredible, and then hearing him tell stories, because, you know, like, John wasn't the easiest guy to work for, and hearing him kind of deal with all these things on so many levels beyond just playing, and you know, this beat and that beat and this paradiddle and that paradiddle was so insightful about surviving in the business and working with people, and you know, even like the rudiments of, like, when you do a session, you know, like as far as coming in and what's the beat of the song going to be, what's happening, you know, and what's the form of the song. And, you know, as a jazz cat, you kind of play sometimes compose through something and just think about getting a great vibe and a feeling. And, you know, I mean, form matters there too, so I hate to overgeneralize about any of this, but coming in and hearing a song and being able to make a chart and all these kind of things and understanding the form, you know, has been a real lifesaver, like in all these different gigs I've ended up having to do, like, you know, going into Letterman or the Songwriters Hall of Fame or all these different things where you have to learn, you know, 30 songs and knock it out of the park with like 1 or 2 rehearsals, you know, and because there's no way I can memorize all that stuff. So a lot of those skills he really keyed me into, you know, back then, and man, I sure owe him a lot, you know, with all that.
So he taught you to make charts.
He taught me to understand form, yeah. And my chart thing, it's funny, Drum Magazine did this article, but it had both of us just by coincidence, you know, we were both in it, and it talked about this process of learning songs fast, and like, you know, what do you have to do if you get hired to do 10 songs in one day, you know. And like the reading thing is interesting. I think I'm glad I can read. I think there's a lot of cats who've been successful and you can have a career without being able to read, but this idea of being able, though, to at least write out verse, chorus, you know, bridge, breakdown, and the number of bars, just to get a handle on the form of a song, you know, those are pretty, like, really great skills to have if you're going to survive in a studio, you know. And I think reading is important too for that. But it's funny, when I was coming up, I thought, oh man, I'll never be able to, you know, there was this vibe of like, if you weren't in the North Texas State 1 o'clock band and read Fly Shit at 300 beats a minute in 7/8 going to 15/16 and all this, that they're, you know, that's what cutting sessions in New York was about, you know. And I found that to be like furthest from the truth. Like, it was really like a lot of times, like on jingles and things like that, or record dates, they play you the song and you have to like kind of wipe your own butt. Nobody gives you a drum part, and you have to like take care of business on your own, you know. And the ability, like, if they program some fills that they want you to do, like working with Shakira was like this, like it was very much about, you had to give her what her demos were about. And then once you did that, maybe she would let you do what was natural for a real cat to do. But, you know, like if I didn't have the ability to transcribe every little diddly-doddly that she had programmed, that wouldn't have flown with her, you know. And so I'm glad those skills have paid off, you know. But I think that you can also survive without being a super great reader that, you know, reads the black page, for instance.
Do you know a lot of cats that are, you know, heavy cats, we're talking, that don't read? I mean, do you have...
Wow.
I'm talking, not doesn't be drummers, I'm just talking in general. Do you know a lot of cats that they just have an ear and they can just...
Yeah, well, Buddy was legendary for that, right? He would hear something
Buddy,
down.
But I mean, I'm talking about just guys you work with just over the years. Have you seen it?
Most of the cats I know, if they can't read, they have a system for kind of wiping their butt on it, you know.
Right.
And if it means like, you know, like lines that don't make any sense to anybody else but them, the thing about trying to survive just by memorization is a bitch if you're hired to come in and like knock out, you know,
Like
4 or 5 things in a 3-hour date or something like that, you know. But like a lot of the jingle sections and stuff, you're given, you know, a master rhythm chart, which is kind of like just slashes and chord changes, and then it's up to you, you know, to figure out how you're going to approach it as a drummer, you know. So anyway, that's the whole the reading thing has been a trip. But back to the Bloomington, just I was also lucky to be working again, like in a band that was working all the time. It's this band called Kilo, which had some players in it that have gone on to do some stuff. Like Crystal Taliaferro was in the band, and she's was out with Billy Joel. She did Springsteen a long time ago, and Joe Cocker and all these people, incredibly talented. She's in Nashville now. Crystal, Billy Joel. You might even recognize she's a percussionist with dreads, really cute, and a really talented singer and percussionist, and done like so many tours, amazing. And Jeff Jacobs was a keyboard guy that he toured with Billy Joel and came here to New York and was working right away. And then Everett Bradley was in that band, and he's actually with Springsteen right now. So it was a wild time of being there because there were a lot of talented people. Like the jazz program had, well, Chris Bodie was there. We were the same age. We went to school together. And, you know, he was so talented, man. And Bob Hurst, the bass player that played with Wynton Marsalis, and they did this night show for a while, and he was just on that last McCartney record, and he's with Diana Krall now, and incredible bass player, incredible musician. So it was like him and then Jim Beard, who's playing with Steely Dan now, but he worked with Wayne Shorter and all these people, and McLaughlin was writing tunes and producing some Stern records and stuff. He was the keyboard guy, and then John Harrington was around Indianapolis at that time. He's playing with Steely Dan now. So it was this crazy-ass window of people. Ralph Bowen, this tenor player that's incredible. It was an OTB, that band Out of the Blue, that was on Blue Note that exploded in the, I guess it was the late 80s, man. And so, you know, the thing about school, you know, and like, I felt like the benefit of it was really being around players that were there at that level, and that just made you rise. Your own shit had to rise up, you know. And so, fuck, you know, I'm sitting there playing with Bob Hurst, and there's Jim Beard, and Harrington's playing guitar when he's, you know. And John Von Ohlen was around Indianapolis there. He's that, like, legendary big band guy, incredible musician, drummer that played with, I think, Woody Herman for a while. And his style was so unique. It was like Elvin in a big band, like really, really round and loose. And his approach was such a trip in a big band. And seeing him play, there's a guy, Killer Ray Appleton, that was hanging there. And, man, he was such a character. I loved him so much. He played with Freddie. You know, Freddie Hubbard and all those guys came from Indianapolis. So back in the day, he was playing with Freddie and Wes Montgomery, and going and seeing him play and being exposed to that. And he had so much charisma, and it's such a great feel. And he's in New York now and quite a bit older. And I just saw him a couple weeks ago. He said, "Man, I have a birthday. I want you to come up." I said, "Oh yeah, man, definitely." So I go. He says, "It's gonna be at this guy's house in Harlem. We're gonna hang out." And you know, I hadn't seen him in a long time. He lost a foot. He had lost a foot to diabetes or something. And he's had some problems, but he's such a great spirit. And went and saw him play at Fat Cat. He still does some gigs, you know. And so I go up to his birthday party, and ends up it's his Buddhist meeting. And so I show up and I hear him chanting outside, you know, and all that's cool. But he kind of fooled me into that, because I guess that's called Saka something Buko or something, where you try to, you know, just introduce other people to the thing. And it's that Nam Myoho Renge Kyo that like I think Buster Williams and her. So, but seeing him has been really fun after all these years.
And by the way, you got to New York. I mean, you're at this point. You're in New York.
No, not yet. I guess I'm still in Bloomington.
Okay,
you know, and I'm working with this band. And so I guess what I was trying to just think about was, I didn't come out of the jazz program like just as a jazz bow with blinders on. Like, I was exposed to all this other shit, like with Kenny, which was like this complete, you know, rock and roll thing, big ass sound, fucking powerful, man. And then, but like really soulful, big spirit, amazing heart. And, you know, seeing him start being on these big records, you know, like Jack and Diane was huge and Hurt So Good, all those hits, you know, and like having lessons with the cat that was doing that stuff and being around it was just so lucky and so inspirational.
And was there like, I want that? Was that going on? Like, this is what I want to do, what he's doing?
Well, I knew I always wanted to be a drummer, and I knew all that.
But I mean, on that level, like, were you seeing him and going, "Yeah, man, this looks good"?
Yeah. No, it was cool to see, you know, in the big crowds. And
I
the
mean,
whole
he's
thing.
on the radio and the whole thing. It's like,
yeah. Ow! 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 Rock and roll. Yeah. No, that was fun, man. And so I'm glad I didn't come out though like just like a jazz cat. You know, I'm glad I was exposed to all this stuff, and I feel like it really helped me later on when, you know, as far as surviving in New York and all that stuff, it's the more stuff you can kind of do, the more likely you are to at least survive and not fall into one kind of slot.
Sure.
So, you know, the way I got to New York was actually kind of through Kenny, because he did this record with this guy, John Eddie, who was kind of like a Springsteen-esque artist.
I remember John Eddie.
Yeah. And he was on Columbia, and he was managed by Tommy Mottola, who was the same people that managed Mellencamp and Hall & Oates and like Carly Simon. And it was like, wow, this is so exciting. And so that's why John Eddie was in Bloomington making this record. And so then when the record was going to come out, you know, Kenny obviously couldn't tour, so it was like, hey, you know, this is a student of mine, you know, he's a good cat. And so I got this gig, and I was able to move out of Indiana finally with a gig. Like I didn't come to New York just like, oh shit, and start washing dishes. I was lucky enough to come here with a gig. But you know, it was a freaked out gig. Like it paid like $300 a week, and then they cut us to $225 a week or something, which was like, you know, that's like $30 a day. And
but I was gonna say, like, at the time, was it?
It was still dude.
It was still.
No, it was rough, man. It was rough.
Where were you living when you got here?
Man, I was living in Spanish Harlem with a girl that I knew from Bloomington that was trying.
And that's when it was not hip to live in Spanish Harlem, man.
No, it was tough. And my truck, and the truck would get like the window smashed out, and it was really hard.
Yeah, that was rough back then.
And then, but we were gigging. At least we were kind of I moved out here in the winter of, I think it was the winter of '88 or '89. And then we were supposed to start working in January, but then we really didn't start working until June, and that was weird. And we lived out in this house in Montclair, and it's off Route 3. And
in Montclair, New Jersey.
Yeah, because we were sort of. Yeah. But then I was staying with the girl in Spanish Harlem, so I was kind of all over the place, you know. But
were you just doing the John Eddie gig at this point, or were you also gigging around?
No, the freelancing thing hadn't happened yet.
Okay.
So, you know,
But that was your job.
Yeah, and I was just glad, and I really believed it, and I swallowed the whole thing, hook, line, and sinker. Like, oh man, Tommy Mottola, wow, this manager, there's no way this thing isn't gonna hit, you know?
Right.
And
what was John Eddie like to work with?
He was interesting, man. I don't want to say anything.
Interesting.
Bad.
That's a good choice of word.
I mean, it was a complicated time, I think, for him, because that first record he made, they put a lot of money in it, and then, you know, there's a book called Hitman.
I know Hitman. Yeah.
Yeah, and they discussed, I think, John's thing, because Mottola, that's when they had this crackdown about promotion and independent promotion, because, you know, I guess it's kind of legendary, like, you know, all those records sort of, the way they were promoted and the payola and the whole thing. And then I think there was a crackdown on that whole thing with Columbia and then Yentikov and all those guys. And it sort of pulled some of the promotion off of John's records. So, you know, they didn't really get the treatment of that whole thing, you know, if that makes any sense.
I got you.
So the second record barely came out that was made in Mellencamp's, and he got dropped. And but we were still kind of gigging around, and you know, we rehearsed in Philadelphia at the Trocadero for like months, sort of like living in guitar player's living room and eating tuna fish.
Are you in a van at this point?
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah.
All of that. And it was tough, but I was playing, and it's funny, and after seeing all the stuff that Kenny kind of dealt with, it was like, oh man, hang in there, even though this sucks and stuff, just hang in there. So then we got picked up by Elektra, or he got picked up, and we made a record with David Briggs, who had just come off like doing a Neil Young record, and a lot of critical success. So this would have been like in 89 or 90, and so made this record for Elektra, and I saw like $500,000 or 300 something go into this record. We all went up to Bearsville and Woodstock, where the studio was, and then the label didn't put that out, and it got dropped. So all this was like a really huge slap in the face about the music business, like, you know, being in a band that falls apart. I mean, it happens all the time, but like when it happens to you for the first time and you really like starstruck and believing in it, it's really a eye opener, you know, like, oh shit, this is a motherfucker. You know, what are we gonna do now, man? And so he still tried to keep the band together, but he was trying to take acting lessons or something crazy like that, and he was making us do some different stuff, like show up and rehearse forever and him not be there, and it was wild. And so I started freelancing, and you know, and I was trying to stay in New York as much as possible because I wanted to have a sense of vision about being in New York and not just like ending up and staying in New Jersey. But there was a freelance scene out in Jersey that was really a trip, like La Bamba, who actually is the trombone player on the Conan show now, and Mark Pender. Yeah. Like all those guys were kind of working out there in Jersey and doing gigs all the time. And so I kind of fell into that scene, which was great because it helped make some money, and I was doing other stuff. And then there was this blues band, the Fairlanes, which was really interesting. It was a blues band based in Jersey, and like used a lot of great New York drummers, like Sim Kane from Henry Rollins' band did it, you know. Van Romain was a great drummer.
Wow,
Dan
man.
Hickey.
You're pulling out some names. I love it.
Yeah. All these guys freelanced in the Fairlanes, and even Ernest Boone Carter was in this band back in the day. Yeah, and you know, he's the original cat that played Born to Run and all that.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was another one of those kind of freelance gigs, and I was just happy to be working. And but I remember driving back to New York, like trying to get to Spanish Harlem after one of those blues gigs in Asbury or something, Stone Pony, and you know, it being like 3:30 in the morning, and this was before any of the SNL things happened, you know, that deal had fallen out, and it was like, man, this is a motherfucker. You know, like I'm not gonna ever have any health insurance.
Right.
I'm not really gonna have, even if I land a tour, you know, the tour, you got a good run for 8 months or so, and then what happens, you know? But I just knew in my heart that I was a drummer no matter what the fuck, man. Whether I was gonna be eating tuna fish with cats in a living room, or whether something was gonna come together and work out, you know. But what was interesting about that was it also made me realize, you know, I'm not gonna drag a bunch of kids through this kind of shit, you know. Like, it was tough for me to figure out, because I was kind of raised that, you
mean having a family?
Yeah. It was like really tough for me to figure out. Yeah. Okay, so this shit is a bitch, and I loved music so much and hanging, and I knew that was a big part of like learning and being, you know, seeing people play. But like, if I had a kid at home crying, that was gonna make it a lot harder to go do the $40 gig in Jersey or something. You know?
Was that ever something that you wrestled with at some point? Did you ever just say, wait a minute, though, I kind of want,
No, I'm at peace with all that. Amen. Clink. No, I am, and I guess just though, it made me realize, hey man, you know, having kids is a big responsibility, and playing drums for a living is hard ass fucking thing to pull off.
Yeah.
And I'm not discouraging people to do what they want to do, but man, stitching together a career year after year or decade after decade and having any kind of longevity as just playing drums, you know. And I was cool. I was happy to be in New York freelance. I mean, I love New York. When I got to New York, it was like, it just felt right. And the thing about New York, it just kicks your ass, man. It just, you wake up and it's like, motherfucker, you got to pull some shit together. You know, rent is expensive, and you know, going and seeing people play, that was so amazing. That was kind of before YouTube, and man, I'll never forget the first time I went to see Elvin play, and it was so out. I started damn crying, which is, I'm such a sissy about this shit. Man, I sat there and I just started weeping. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? Get your shit together. And it was at the Blue Note, and it was expensive to get in, and I was right in the front row, and I was right there.
You probably saw his wife set the drums up?
Yeah, Kiko, man. Absolutely. Amen. Yep. Yeah, get your wives to set your shit up. I like that. Woo! So, you know, and I was just thinking, what is this about? And what was amazing was actually seeing, because like I said, this was kind of before YouTube and all that stuff, and I'd seen those cool movies where like he's in the vanguard and he plays and he talks about seeing colors and the symbols and stuff.
Right. The synesthesia.
I love
yeah.
But seeing him actually play physically and this sound coming out behind the drums, which was something you always heard, you know, on the Joe Henderson records or all the hit Blue Note shit, you know, that everybody listens to, Wayne Shorter and all that stuff that he's on, Train stuff, and see this cat actually making that sound and then realizing that he was such an individual voice. I mean, and what it took for him to follow that with his heart, and it was so incredible to see. And the other thing that Elvin had was his presence. Like, it was 360 degrees the way it could go. Like, he had the most innocent, childlike fascination and happiness, and then like 10 seconds later it could be the most evil shit, fucking dirt funky shit that was just like, man, from the center of the earth, of just like, what the fuck, like the devil, you know. And then it would be this like angelic happy shit sometimes, you know. It was just amazing, the range of like he was incredible. So anyway, the point is, like, being in New York,
you're running around seeing all these cats,
yeah,
like,
and it was such an inspiration, man, to see that. Like, there was a jazz mecca to go and be able to see Roy Haynes. How does Roy Haynes do what he's doing at his age? It's not like you go and say, oh, that's so nice. You see a shell of what he used to do. Man, he's still kicking so much ass, man. He's just incredible. And, you know, didn't see Billy Higgins and all these guys, Ed Blackwell, that I grew up listening to, and then you're actually in the room seeing them and their touch and how they're making this sound. And that's what's so interesting about New York too, is how drummers play rooms, and that's so insightful, like, because you know, when I first moved here and coming from the Kenny thing, it was all about like projecting to the last row of a stadium and big sound and rock and roll outdoors things, you know. Sure. But then all of a sudden you're playing at, like, you know, CBGB's Gallery, which was like the little, well, you know, it's just wild, like those small rooms, like, and it was a trip too, like when I started freelancing after the Johnny thing all fell apart, and I was freelancing, like, I started doing a lot of singer-songwriter gigs, and that was when the kind of the VH1 Unplugged thing was sort of exploding. And
that was the CB's Gallery idea.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it sort of became about, like, if you want to work a lot, you know, a cat that could play songs and stuff, there was work like that for people, you know, songwriter gigs. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, being able to play with rods and blastics and combinations of brushes and all, I mean, I must have, like, every little variation from wire brush to, like, you know, rod, as far as, like, you know, like, I love, like, Vic Firth has all those brushes where it's like the light handle one, you know, it's kind of a straight ahead one. Then there's that Steve Gadd version, which is so cool, where that trick of bending the brush a little bit on the edge so it gets this smooth thing, you know. Yeah, but it's this really smooth ass light sound. And then they have the live ones, which are the red handles one, which have these little, like, dinklies on the end of it to make a louder sound. And then the cymbal can really, like, speak then, you know. So you could have, like, right hand have your cymbal, right, you know, and then your left hand have the smoother, quieter one or something. And then, you know, Vader makes all these great things, like those monster brushes that are like, I've made all these combos of, like, the rod on one side and the monster brush on another, like this kind of thing, you know. So
yeah, he's got let's see, that's
a rod,
hot rods, and I don't know
the
what
monster brush,
monster brush, and an LP shaker, and
connected,
all with a rubber band around them all together.
But I mean, a lot of this is kind of, you know, very Kellner influenced.
Sure, of course.
But it's just wild how that whole VH1 Unplugged thing, and then, like, surviving in New York doing those kind of gigs, really forced you to understand how to play these small spaces and the volume, you know, in small New York is a trip like that.
Was there backline back then, by the way, at that point, or were you hauling kits everywhere?
Man, in Jersey, you know, on those blues gigs, I had a little truck, like this little ass truck, and I throw my drums in there. But in New York, there wasn't backline, but it was never reliable. Like, Kenny's Castaway would have a drum set, but it would be completely debilitated.
Kenny's Castaway.
Yeah, and you know this. You know, you've been there, man. And the drum heads would be pitted, man. So you always had to show up with a snare, hi-hats, clutch, all that kind of, a pedal.
Sure.
And then if you know, you'd get there, and then the snare basket would be not holding, and it's like, oh man, this is. But the wild thing about it, it's like, I was somehow just into it, because it put this crazy ass fire in your eyes of like, you know, if you can survive this shit, man, you can, like, being a drummer in New York can be just so tough logistically. Like, you know, I'd come on with these blues gigs. I was living on 14th Street between 2nd and 3rd, and this was like, must have been in 90 or 91, and the crack epidemic thing was really big then. And they would sell crack out of this door, my door, and then, you know, I'd come in at 3 in the morning and there'd be cats, and then it was always kind of scary, like shit, because I had to walk it up like 3 flights, but I couldn't walk a whole drum kit up, so when I'd lock the thing, it's like, oh man, are these cats gonna like rip my shit off while I'm up? And you'd call the police. That was when Dinkins was mayor. So you'd call the police, and they'd be like, well, we can't really do anything about it. It's like, man, well, they're selling crack right out of the door, you know, and I was uptight about calling because I thought they'd think if the police came, it must be that guy that just brought the drums in. Let's kill him tomorrow night, you know. But I was just trying to see, it's this, and like, you know, because they would hide the crack vials in the mattresses, like these people would throw trash out and shit, and they always had these little hiding spots for all the vials. Right. So even if they got caught, if
it wasn't on them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
So then it was just a revolving door, and these guys would always show back up, man. It was really
the mattress. And...
It was scary. And then one night, man, they got in somehow into the hallway on the ground level and took a doo-doo. Somebody doo-doo.
Of course, that's a classic New York move, isn't it?
Yeah,
the doo-doo in the hallway.
Yeah, that was rough, man. Coming in and having to load your stuff up, and people doo-dooing and selling crack. Damn. Hard times. Ow! But, well then, you know, one that's about freelancing though. So I did this one singer-songwriter gig, and this was like an incredible lesson. So, you know, the John Eddie thing, which I really believed in with all my heart, and then everything that possibly could go wrong on the label side totally did. So that had imploded, but I was freelancing. I was just happy to be working. You know, I always had this thing. I'm just feel humble and thankful to just be working and have a gig, you know. And so I.
And you were always working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this girl, one of the first singer-songwriter things I ever did, and I mean, I didn't dig it, man. And the songs were like, I thought the lyrics were stupid. It's like acid rain on the plane and the buffalo, and you know, dying or some shit. I mean, it was some sad shit, I thought, you know. But you know, it paid, and it was a gig, and I tried to do a great job. I was always on time, you know. But it was hard for me to actually give off a feeling of I really like what you're doing, because I kind of didn't really like it, you know. Mm-hmm. And so we did the gig. Everything was cool. Like I said, I thought I played well. It was, and then they did a gig another 6 months later, and then I didn't get called back. I was trying to figure out, oh man, so what was that about? What was that about? You know, I tried to think about it. And I think ultimately what I learned from it was like, you know, I didn't make her feel like maybe I was in her corner with like her songs or support. And it's so interesting with drummers, like, you know, or anybody that's freelancing, like, it's a wild bridge you kind of got to cross, which is staying positive through all this stuff. And I think if any drummer's ever like been a leader himself or ever tried to produce something, it really, when you're in the other person's shoes, like so many drummers, we think just of being a sideman, you know, but the moment you're like having to pull something together on your own, you know, you really sense like, well, this cat really doesn't want to be here, and he's just in it for the bread, or, you know, oh, I can count on this guy to really be supportive no matter what, or this guy's a dick, he's gonna not even show up for the gig, or, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting sensing all of that and feeling that, you know, like, and it's a real learning experience to be in the other side of what we as drummers kind of do. So if you're like if you ever have to put up your own band together, or have
dealing
to
with sidemen.
Yeah, right. Because so many of us just have the one side, the perspective of one side, you know. Mm-hmm. So it was a really big learning lesson. Like, well, man, if I am gonna try to survive as a freelance player and work with a whole bunch of different people, and if I don't want to drive a cab or like start washing dishes, I'm gonna have to come to terms with I'm not gonna really maybe love everything I'm doing.
Yeah.
But the wild thing about drums is, like, somebody told me once, he said, man, you know, drummers is so interesting that you could have so much shit falling apart around you. You could have doo-doo songs, terrible singers, you know, but the drums can almost be this insulated little cone, of like, if the drummer's happening, the shit is at least gonna feel good, or there's gonna be a nice feeling coming from the drums, And so I really tried to get inside that, and just sort of as a survival skill for freelancing, I feel like I've had to cut away half of my damn brain, man.
Well, you're onto something right now. That's really important. Obviously, about being a working cat.
Yeah, because
you gotta eat it a lot. You just gotta shut up and right.
And trying to stay positive through that and not imploding. And like I remember a drummer, a New York drummer, saying to me once, "Man, I'm not gonna do any more cover gigs." And I thought, oh, that's interesting, because it made sense in a way, because at that time in the early 90s, like, if you just did club dates, for instance, it was easy to fall into the abyss of like just being
wedding dates and
and not ever, and like places like the Bitter End or where original CBGBs, but where original music was being done, there was always sort of a shot that somebody might get signed or somebody might go to another level.
Yeah, but you never know who walks in.
Yeah,
right.
No, and that was always the interesting thing about New York. Like you never know that in New York. It's such a trip,
Who could walk in? Exactly.
And that's what's interesting also about YouTube now. Like, cats being able to get a gig by YouTube posting, which I love. It's almost like, the idea of having to be in the music centers to get discovered. YouTube has been really fascinating with lowering down the gatekeeping of some of the stuff.
You don't have to be in New York, you mean?
Well, I wonder, those people that like, didn't somebody get a gig with Jeff Beck or something from the YouTube? Or somebody got some kind of big thing, or there's been stories like that, like people getting gigs.
I know the singer from Journey now. He got it from YouTube.
Right.
Neil Schon was going through YouTube, and he's like, hey, there he is. And
yeah, that's so fascinating. Like, see, I don't think that would have happened before YouTube. It's almost like that cat would have had to be in LA to meet Neil Schon or something like that.
That's right.
So that's well. But anyway, so back then in New York, it was before pre-YouTube, BCYT.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, really.
And cats. So this guy said that, and I thought it made sense. But then it's like, the thing that was wild about club days is at least it paid some good bread, and you could go and sort of be able to cobble together your rent by at least keeping some of that going on, But the other thing that was wild about it was like, think of some tired ass club date, like celebrate. So just like that kind of 4 on the floor feel, like. And again, this is that thing about falling in love with playing simply and your heart and the groove thing, like. There's cats that, man, that is the tiredest shit. I am so tired of playing that shit. And then the other side of that is like that same feel, 4 on the floor thing. Maybe that's like, Adele record has 4 on the floor all over it. It's the biggest record,
But it's how it feels, as you were saying. It's how it's. I mean, Al Jackson and Junior, as you were saying. Like listening to Al Green growing up. It's like.
Dig.
Why is it so good? Why does it feel so good?
Yeah. All that magic.
Doing it,
Yeah. Well, those cats that have magic, like why does the simple beat feel better? Steve Ferroni and Steve Jordan and those cats.
Right.
But the point I was trying to get to was kind of about just psychologically trying to stay positive through that as a freelance drummer. Because if you were like shutting yourself off from doing. Only original gigs. Like I like that from the sense of vision of like, okay, this can go to another level. But then if you're sitting on your ass and not working, there's a way to stay positive through whatever you're doing as a drummer, I think, regardless of how poo-poo everything around you might be. And I think it's a lucky thing about drums is that it can transcend sometimes, bad. If you're positive, you can almost just like hang in there through any kind of bad shit.
Well, two questions for that. First of all, did you at any point did you want to be a part of a band, or did you just want to be a freelance guy all along?
No, I really like the idea of being a part of a band. I remember
you were open to that. At that point. You were looking for that,
and I kind of like really emotionally was into that whole thing with like, okay, because there was Kenny was such an influence, and here's this thing with this John Eddie guy, and let's all believe in this.
That's what I'm saying. Had the John Eddie thing worked out, you would have stayed with it. Like you could have been the Max Weinberg of no, you follow it. You know what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Like you that would have been cool with you.
Yeah, totally. But then when everything imploded, and I saw that there was like how much of all of that is out of your hands, and in the hands of so many other things, the machine of the music business, it was really like a slap in the face of like, oh wow, man, I gotta figure out a way to survive now, you know. And then freelancing, you know, like I don't think I moved to New York necessarily to do female singers at the bitter end, you know, but it was sort of like, okay, so now.
But that's what was happening.
Yeah, and it was a way of working and surviving. And then, you know, like I said, I cut half of my brain away and tried to then be positive about it, and then also realized there was a huge art to that kind of thing, you know, and like coming up with parts and having that thing, you know, trying to pursue that thing that you're talking about, like developing a really great feel. And there's an art to, you know, that all these different kinds of playing, and you know, like the idea of coming up with parts is so huge in the studio. Like come together, you know, what an incredible drum part, right?
Yeah, brilliant.
Now that same tune could have been just a straight beat, and you know,
it's the choices.
Yeah, and it's wild. Like, you know, there's drummers in situations where it's like you're working with someone on a song and the bridge comes up and they want to completely like change direction, and then do you sort of have some ideas that you can, like, you know, is that something that you've vested time in, or, and that's a really valuable skill in the studio, you know, the ability to come up with parts
fast.
Yeah, versus like, or did you shed, you know, blast beats in 13/8, and believe me, that's totally cool too. I'm really not not trying to be like snarky with it.
But it's a different thing.
It is, and then I've started getting these situations where like what started paying the rent and being sort of rewarded was, you know, having a feel for parts, having, you know,
playing for the song.
Yeah, all that shit. Yeah, man. You know, and that really started to make so much sense to me. You know.
I was going to ask you, but the other thing I wanted to ask you though, just real quick about that time was there? Did you go into the darkness? I mean, were you getting depressed? Were you getting like, I don't know about this, man? Were you having doubts? I mean, was there, you know what I'm saying? Like, was it rough? I mean, in that sense, like mentally.
Well, I really did try to stay positive through everything, but I do think even to this day, there's a thing about, like, I mean, look, I have a lot of pride in being a musician, and I love what I do, and I'm really proud of it. But there's a certain side of me that realizes, you know, like, I don't know how to put it. It's almost like drummers, it can be tough. Like, we're just little doo-doo turds sometimes. Like, that's a terrible thing to say, but you're always sort of working for someone else sometimes, you know, and then like, man, trying to just put something together like where you're sort of in charge of it, you know, it can be tough. And because if you're working for someone else, you're kind of at the mercy of what they're doing, and then if the tour falls through, then, well, there you go, you're fucked, you know. And I mean, it's a really tough way to make a living, but I couldn't do anything else, you know. I like that phrase when they say about being a musician, like, well, only do it if you can't imagine doing anything else, you know.
And by the way, that's a good point. You didn't have another job.
I never have, no.
You never did, right? Since you got here.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Well, I feel fortunate, but I feel like I've put everything I have into that journey, you know. So moving forward along the train, you know, that freelance, I got to play with Joan Osborne, and that was right when she was like, right before she got signed, and man, that was so great. We went to like Europe, and I loved playing with her. I thought she was so awesome. And I was in Southside Johnny for about 6 months.
Oh, in the Asbury Jukes.
Yeah, and that was, you know, you had to be strong, man. It was a big ass horn section.
How'd you get the Southside gig?
Well, kind of from freelancing down there, you know, with La Bamba and Pender, and then they all had a history with that. It's a very, you know, that scene down there is very like cross.
So they pulled you in, like they called La Bamba called you up, hey man.
Yeah, and Bobby Bandiera and all those cats that were part of that, and he was in Southside, and then, you know, and later I ended up doing like a tour with John Bon Jovi for a second when he did solo record, and so.
Okay.
And I got to do a couple tracks with Springsteen. I was gonna play one of those. It's an interesting story about that, but it's that whole Jersey thing is sort of like a cross-pollinated thing. You know, a lot of people, they all know each other.
Did they think you were a Jersey cat?
No, I think, I kind of had a little accent, and they all knew I wasn't from there. And then Pender was from Kansas City, Mark Pender, and I played in his band, and Harrington played in that for a while, and he's a crazy cat. He was always so much fun. And so I was not a New York, what you might say, a characteristic New York player when I first came here. I think I was a lot rawer, or if that makes any sense, because again, that thing about playing smaller rooms, and I was like, big, tried to be big, but it was the 80s. Everybody was kind of playing big then too, But this freelancing thing led to like the Saturday Night Live audition, right? Because
okay.
So
how does that come about?
Well, it's like, everybody says in the podcast and stuff, like the music business really works by word of mouth and who you know and all this stuff. And I was freelancing there was a Lone Star Roadhouse, and this was an interesting, New York story where the person in charge of the band, it wasn't that good, but the players in the band were really good. And that happens a lot in New York. Like, the person pulling it together might not be that strong, but they've hired really great people.
Right.
And then, like, all of a sudden the guitarist, that was in the band 2 years from now gets the gig with, Rod Stewart, and they remember you from 2 years ago, and that's how you end up, maybe, so it's wild how all that works.
Right, you can't see it coming. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And New York is interesting like that, and that's why I think, when you try to do a gig, like, try to keep your shit together and be positive, be professional and on time and all that, and try to be a good cat, and because if you piss someone off, that shit gets remembered, and then when those opportunities arise, it can't fall off the list, So the bass player on this gig, and this gig had the New York, the horn section, Uptown Horns were on it, Crispin and all those guys, and they had just come off the road with the Rolling Stones. They were doing that, and the bass player was this guy Paul Solo, who was in the SNL band, and he goes way back with G.E. Smith, who was running the SNL band at that time, and Matt Chamberlain had done, well, Chris Parker had done it for a long time.
But Matt Chamberlain did it 1 year,
He
right?
did, right.
That's right.
And then he decided to leave, and then that's how this opened up, And I'd played with Paul. I'd been playing with Paul a lot, because he had actually been in John Eddie's first band, and he was kind of around the Jersey thing, but also freelance in New York. So he had a great feel, and we really enjoyed playing with each other. And so he said, "Hey, man, so I guess Matt's leaving SNL. They're gonna have this audition for the drum thing, and why don't you come do it?" And I said, "Oh man, that'd be incredible. So then GE calls me on the phone and says, "Hey man, how you doing?" And I said, "Oh wow, this is great," And I was like, he said, "This is GE." I said, "Oh man, the famous guy on TV." And then he kind of laughed. And so I said, "Well, we're gonna have some auditions when we come down." It was at SIR on 25th Street, and I don't know if I'd been to SIR yet. Like, I'd kind of been, I was working, but I was on like this kind of lower level. And at SIR on 25th Street, that was like, there was one on 52nd Street back then. That was like, wow, that's where the Stones rehearsed and all this shit. And I was like, oh my God, because I always had this dream of trying to be a New York musician. I'd see these pictures of like Steve Gadd with a Yankees shirt on at McKell's or something. Oh, that's so cool, man. All those guys are hanging, and Lou Marini and all these people, Steve Jordan. Yeah, and it was like, there was this community of musicians, and I always dreamed like, wow, wouldn't that be so amazing to like be a cat in New York?
And this is the biggest thing, right? I mean, obviously, like at this point, you're just thinking, holy shit, this would be...
Yeah, like I was doing Southside, and I was going to Europe with Joan, and I was doing all this stuff, and I was having a blast, and I, like I said, I love playing with Joan so much.
But not making a lot of money, right?
No, and this, this kind of gig was like such a...
You still on 14th Street at this point?
Yes, yeah, and it's still the crack, and the people poo-pooing.
Right.
and man, just dealing with your truck on 14th Street, like the alternate side
parking. Oh, come on,
you'd
man.
come in from a gig. And
Wednesdays are the only day that are...
Exactly, you know the deal.
Yeah, bro, I know.
And man, you'd go to bed at 4, but you'd have to get up at 7:30 to move your damn truck.
That's brutal.
And then you had to move it back in 2 hours, so you'd
and you're sitting in your car until 10:30 or whatever the fuck.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
The street cleaner comes along. Yeah.
My truck finally got stolen off the street, and then it's perfect. It was stolen off the street. I think it was chopped up, and then they took the license plates and started doing illegal shit with that license plate. And then it got like into some kind of legal thing, and I had to go down to City Hall to sort of prove that it wasn't my car anymore, even though like it was one of those things where the police knew it had been stolen, but the division of vehicles and stuff didn't know the right hand with the left hand.
Sure.
Man, New York, I puts that crazy shit in your eyes about it being a New York musician, you know, that kind of shit. Okay,
it's hard, yeah.
So anyway, just going to SIR on 25th Street and like doing an audition or something like that was like you know.
Yeah.
And
so let me ask you, was there anything to prepare, or was it just you're just coming in and you don't know what's happening?
No, it was totally nothing. Yeah. It was like, I think Paul said, "Oh man, he's just gonna play some tunes," and you know, and I'd been doing a lot of blues gigs, which was great because the band was sort of built around this like blues thing, and it was, I think G was looking for like simple and big and someone that could, you know, and someone with a good feel and that could read. And
I remember that it was bluesy at that.
Yeah, he was totally into the blues thing.
Yeah, the telly and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I show up and man, he was loud, you know, but it sounded amazing because he has these vintage amps and all these vintage guitars and like the tubes are all perfect. It was the first time I was ever exposed to like that kind of sound where it's like, damn, the shit is happening with this guitar sound that's really different than anything I'd ever sort of. Maybe it was just that it was so loud, but no, he really he has a thing like this thick-fingered, big, soulful, crazy-ass thing that he can blow a roof off the place, you know, he really can. But like he's not like a reader and he's not like a jazz cat, you know, he has a very specific thing, but what he does, he can blow a place up, you know. And then I felt really at home with that because it was like he'd start some shit and then I was so hungry, man. I was just so hungry to get a gig, and I'd, you know, been doing all these blues gigs out in Jersey, so I felt like it was really a slot that I was comfortable with, and it's like, let's go, motherfucker, let's go.
You had your shuffled down.
Yeah, I just felt like, man, you start some shit, let's go, let's get the fuck down, man. Mm-hmm. and it felt good. It was crazy, and I walked out of there feeling like, you know what, man, that whatever happens, that couldn't have gone better. As far as like that felt really right to me somehow.
How long was it?
We must have played a couple of hours.
Couple hours?
Or at least, yeah, something like that.
Damn, then, that's a good sign. And by the way, did you hear of any other names? You don't have to mention them if you don't want to, but did you know of other cats? Like,
yeah.
You did? And were they heavy? Were they...
It's interesting. I think, you know, there's some... It was just a couple guys. One of the guys was kind of a famous guy, but really different players than sort of what I was about, and but also not. It wasn't really iconic cats because I felt like G wanted to have someone that he could. This was a real interesting learning. I mean, he wanted, I think, someone young that was going to listen to what the fuck he had to say and follow him, and you know, like I think he wanted someone that was young, like
he could mold.
Definitely. And I mean, that was lucky, you know, because I mean, obviously there's like incredibly great drummers that are better, absolutely, but it was interesting for what he was looking for, you know, and how I think that's interesting about auditions in general. Like, you know, sometimes who gets the gig may not be what drummers think of as like the greatest drum soloist or something like that, but it can be about a lot of other things.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, ended up like got the gig, but I didn't get it was like.
But how did that happen? I mean, let's just you know, like you did the audition. Let's say, what is it, like a Monday, Tuesday?
It was in August. It was in August, and then the season started.
How long till you find out you got the gig?
I guess. How did it happen? Because he never really called me then. It was the contractor, this guy Lou Delgado, who had been on the show forever. I got a call from him saying, "Hey, you know, so I guess we're gonna be doing this. You got the gig. This is great. We're gonna." I just had the gig for 3 shows, so it wasn't like they gave me the whole season.
What does that even mean? They told you you're gonna do 3 shows.
Yeah,
and that's
I think it was kind of like an audition thing because that gig is a trip because it's live TV. It's like you can be a great player, but if you don't have the temperament or like the mental sort of maybe focus to like, you know, when you're live on TV and you know that kind of shit. Like, there's some cats that maybe, you know.
Right, they just can't hack it. Sure, I got you.
So, and it's funny. I'd done a lot of when I was in Bloomington. Like the guy that taught trumpet was Chris Bodie's teacher, this famous trumpet teacher there, and he made all his trumpet students read these books like one was Psycho-Cybernetics, and one was in the inner game of music, kind of those kind of books, you know, which are really about like handling stress. And because, you know, drumming is you're really in the hot seat, because if something doesn't feel right, or if something, you know, in the air just isn't coming together, a lot of times it lands on the drummer's fucking lap, you know. And having the mental strength to keep your shit together through that kind of heat, you know. And I've invested a lot of time in trying to figure that out. Like, I love it. I read a Roy Haynes interview, and he's like, you know, playing and like feeling the strength from you going out to the other cats. Like this idea of a drummer who's like, you know, a strong central thing that people can count on. And then, you know, by the same token, being a drummer that is like really flexible too, because like G's thing was, you follow me, and here we go. And it was really about, I had to watch every body motion of his thing, you know, because we'd be live on air and he'd just start playing some shit and you wouldn't know what it was going to be, and you just had to fall in. And I think he got that from kind of working with Bob Dylan, because Dylan would just start some shit in some keys and
yeah.
You know, and I think G liked that edge of just doing some shit.
Let's just wing it.
And then like the horn players wouldn't know what key we were in sometimes and stuff like that. And it was like, damn, man, this is out, you know. But then he would do it and be like, okay, motherfucker, let's go, motherfucker.
Yeah. Just commit.
Yeah, you want to start some shit? Let's do it.
Yeah.
And then once I remember though, like this, he one time, it's only happened once, but like we were doing an ending. And it was like, we were off the air even, and it was some like rocking thing, and it was like a blues ending, and it would be a thing that could maybe like have a slight retard to it. And I think I did sort of a you know.
Right.
But I think he was thinking it was just gonna stay in time, but it was still in it, right? And man,
no retard.
Yeah, he came up to me, man, and said, motherfucker, this is my band, you know. This is my band. This is not your band. You follow me, you know. And I shit myself.
Damn.
Not really, but it was scary, you know. And it made me realize, like, okay, man, this is his thing, and I'm right there. And that's so interesting. That's different about when people are relying on the drummer to be the center of the thing, you know. It's wild, like when they said like Buddy Rich or like Al Jackson, like if you ask them about a tempo or question the tempo, like is this a little bit fast or a little slow, you know, like. They said Al Jackson would throw a stick at, you know, try to like be between your eyes, you know, and Buddy would kick your ass or something. And then I remember reading like an interview with Ben Riley when he talked about playing with Monk, and, you know, maybe Monk would count off this tune, maybe Ben would count. It seemed like this really much more like family, you know, thing. And it wasn't like there was a center of power and control, you know. And I'm not trying to argue for one way being better or the other. It's just interesting as drummers how we have to have the flexibility to kind of fit into all these kind of situations. And like I've played with singer-songwriters before that if I follow them or try to listen to them, like their singing can be so out of time, or their guitar playing, because you know they're so not in touch with playing with an ensemble.
It's the worst. Like your timing's off, and it's like, motherfucker, you're not helping.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, so then, like, well, do you ignore them and just lay it down, or do you kind of breathe with them and make it happen as a family? And that can be great, or that can lead you into a swamp of shit, or it can be awesome. Or, you know, it's just like there's no right or wrong, and there's so many gray areas. I remember another situation when I started freelancing. This girl, she went through drummers, man, like toilet paper. And then I said, and a lot of it was like, oh, the tempo, and you know, when you play with people, like the song can go great and the crowd can love it, and you come off stage and somebody, that might have been just one beat too fast tonight, or something like that, you know. So we started rehearsing, and I said, well, hey, let's decide on some tempos, and we had this click track.
You bought the click track, right? You bring the metronome, and you set the sound.
And man, that shut that shit right the fuck down. It was like after then she couldn't really get into that whole thing, you know. So then she had to start thinking about some other shit.
She had to blame something else.
Yeah. But man, that thing about surviving that way as a drummer through all that kind of shit that gets thrown at you is huge. It's huge. It's really huge. And like, you know, just last June, I do the Songwriters Hall of Fame, which kind of happened through Phil Ramone, and He passed away, which is really sad.
Yeah.
So Aerosmith was one of the cats, the band, and man, I knew Steven Tyler, was really into drums and had strong opinions about things. I was like, man, I gotta knock this out. I had Alan Dawson always used to say this, you never have a second chance to make a first impression, as a drummer. So we're doing Walk This Way, and I was just on kill mode, as far as I just gotta take care of, because there's been situations with Fogerty and Mellencamp and all these people at this gig where, if there's one glimpse of doubt that they can oh, something not right, or so you really have to come out of the gate for real, and so luckily Steven came out because I didn't even know he was there. We were doing it with Joe Perry, and then said, man, that was killer, man, you are out of your mind, let's take so it's wild how as drummers, that thing about when to take charge and kill it, and when to sit back and fit inside somebody else's thing. With the GE thing, it was very much about wherever he put it, I had to sit in that.
Now, did things ever gel with GE? I mean, were you guys, was it always just a very professional kind of distant thing, or did it get cozier over time?
Oh no, I feel close to GE. I think he's a complicated cat, but I really musically I love playing with him, and I love when he...
It got warmer?
Well, no, it was always kind of warm. That was just sort of one instance where it was always cool. So I didn't want to imply that as being because he was always really nice to me and supportive, and I think we always got along great. It was more about this one moment in the heat of battle, and then musicians sometimes when they feel like they're not in charge or something like that, and their thing is to be in charge, it's just interesting how that can, cats can. Yeah. So I really dig him, and I'm so thankful to him, because that really started a whole new thing, and having that gig was so lucky. There's some funny stories about that first year. I guess that's when Sinead O'Connor did that thing where she ripped up the picture of the Pope.
Fight the real enemy.
Yeah. And so, we were there, and there's a run-through show at 8:00, and she during the run-through she did the same song, but she held up a picture of this little kid behind bars, and it was kind of in Costa Rica somewhere, and it was sort of about Amnesty International kind of statement, right?
Right.
And then, man, we're on air, and it was really dramatic because it was just her and the candles, and it was like an a cappella moment, and then she puts that thing. And, man, I remember it was the whole crowd was sucker punched because they're like, what the fuck just happened? And then that was out. And then the Ashley Simpson thing is another classic SNL thing where they start the wrong song, and unfortunately I feel bad. It was the drummer had a laptop by his four-tom, and they were kind of had this set lined up for her promotion stuff. I think it was a 30 or 40 minute set that they were doing live at the time, and so they had cue markers for the different songs, and I think the cat just accidentally queued up the same song again, and that was heartbreaking. I was like, oh man, this poor cat, I hope he doesn't try to jump off the roof, Yeah. But man, just you gotta check your markings or something.
Man, it's
so so the SNL thing was really a great break, and so
do you
much
have to
fun.
go through Lorne Michaels at all?
No, it's interesting, man. I've worked there for this has been my 21st year, and he's never spoken to me.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You've never.
So it's wild, man. It's wild.
It's he's that detached from.
Well, I guess he's kind of got a reputation for kind of handling the show like a detached father,
Yeah,
I mean, the music department is kind of a
separate thing. Yeah,
it is, and the music department upstairs, the guys who work there, that they interact much more than the band. The band kind of comes in. We come in Saturday morning at 11 a.m. and go to 11 to 1 with a rehearsal, and then we're sort of back anytime roughly from 4 to, onward, and then we do the monologue with the host in the late afternoon. Then there's a dinner break, and then we come out and we do a half-hour set, warming up the crowd, do a music thing, and then we do a run-through show from 8 to 10, and then there's a break from 10 to 11 where they're still figuring out what they're going live on the air with, which is such a trip, man. I remember, I still can't get over that. It's Saturday at 8:00, and they've got they've spent all this bread on these sets and this stuff that sometimes just gets trashed and never sees the light of day. And I always thought, well, it seems like by Friday y'all will know what you want to do, right? You know.
Do you get to know any of the talent?
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, by the way, I just want to say I've always noticed this. This has always been something a lot of comedians, and obviously this applies to cast members of SNL, are drummers.
Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah, Dana Carvey, right.
I'm saying, like, I mean, you go back to Eddie Murphy, go back to, you know, I think Piscopo, I mean, well, all of them, Carvey, Fred Armisen, right? I mean, do they come to you? Do they come up to you and say, hey, man, what's up?
Yeah. Sometimes. I mean, you know, I'm kind of, it's wild. I'm not aggressive in that way where I'm like, you know, if Madonna's there, I'm like, hey, I'm the drummer in the house band, and I want your autograph, or please take a picture with me. You know, I don't have any of that together.
No, but do people come to you? I'm saying, like,
yeah. So Fred, you know, he loved to play the drums, and then Dana Carvey, he liked the drums, you know, and Fred, when he would do skits that would involve drums, I was very aware, like, that he, you know, he's gonna be listening, and it's got to be tightened up and what he's into, you know. So if it was like a Ramones thing or something that he was.
Right.
You know, you really should know the real beats, and it's not just bullshit thing, you know. Yeah. So you're right. Yes, some of those cats are drummers. Yeah.
But did they come to you and say, hey, what's that? Like check out the kit and the whole thing?
Yeah.
And what? So all right. So wait, G. Smith. I mean, so then he just was gone.
Right. So that kind of fell out.
I mean, shit went down with G.
Right. And then Lenny Pickett kind of started running the band along with Leon Pendarvis, who's been there forever. And there was kind of a change of the guard. The bass player Tom Barney came in and played bass. He's like a legendary bass player cat. And they hired a girl from Japan to play guitar because I think they wanted to sort of have something totally different than what, you know, a totally different thing. And then that sort of didn't work out. And then Luke Hodge came in and started playing guitar, who's just so amazing. Like, that's that guy Dr. Luke, who's gone on to be like this incredible producer, and like he's gonna go down in history. He sold so many records, it's just amazing. Anyway, so he played in the band for like 10 years, and now James Genius is on bass, which is amazing. You know, plays with Herbie and everybody else, and there's a new guitar guy, Jared Scharf, and Leon Pendarvis is still there. Lenny Pickett runs the band, you know, that's Tower Power and all that, and he's just such an inspiration to play with, such an incredible musician. All these guys, Alex Foster is like all these guys have names in the jazz world. Steve Turre, who was with Art Blakey's band, he has amazing Art Blakey stories, and Ron Blake and Earl Gardner used to play with Mel Lewis and those cats, so it's like, wow, man, you know, and I've learned a lot being around them and hearing their stories. And
how many MDs have you seen?
Well, I guess G did it, and then Lenny and Leon have sort of been co-doing it since then. So,
okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But that, you know, it was a snapshot too. Like, once that happened, you know, there was still a little bit of the remnants of like the New York session scene happening then, like with the jingles and the record dates and stuff. And I started working more, and you know, that whole thing, there used to be a phone service for musicians, and you'd have a pager, and there was a thing called Radio Registry, and, you know, that felt like a big deal. Oh, I'm on Radio Registry, and you'd get this page, and then they'd say, can you come, you know, to JSM and do this demo for Firestone or some shit, and I thought, like, oh, man, this is great. You know, you show up, and there'd be Lou Marini, or you know, Patitucci would be there, or something like that. I remember doing one, like Ron Carter was there, you know, and different things like that. And so that was like really thrilling to be like working, you know. All of a sudden there was like one with B.B. King, and it'd be for Folgers or something, and Ivan Neville, and different people, Aaron Neville.
And this is all from SNL?
Well, I think that really helped, you know, because it was a gig that was in town.
You weren't doing jingles and stuff pre-SNL?
That's for sure, yeah. So it did open up a window of like, well, here's a guy that's around, that's in town, and you know, it's because it's very hard to establish a session presence if you're always kind of darting in and out, or you're out on the road for 8 months and then you come back.
Right.
So that was really fortunate about that. And the other thing is, you know, SNL is really only like 22 shows a year. And you have all summer off to do stuff. You know, I got to tour Sheryl Crow for a while, and so it's not like you're there 5 days a week, you know, tied into a thing. Like, you know, the Letterman thing is a real commitment with your time, you know. And like,
you ever get together with Anton and talk shop?
Yeah, and I think he's great, man. And he's been I mean, I sub for Anton a lot over there.
Yeah.
And it's weird. I've been able to sub there and also over at the Conan thing. And I will say that the Letterman show is the hardest one of those three. Like,
why?
Well, the SNL thing is really straight ahead. I think it's kind of like we know what our band shots are. What's hard about SNL is when there's a live thing happening. And like there's been things where like Martin Short will show up and he'll do a routine, but then he's like running through the studio singing, and then like the whole idea of him hearing us and us hearing him, like just kind of the technical aspect of like if he's way down the hall and we're like, you know, almost 900 yards away, like if they don't have the monitors right for him, then he can get off, and if he drops lines, like you're live on TV, and then the ability to sort of
you're
adapt.
You're in-ear monitors and all that.
Yeah. And then a lot of the stuff now that we have to do at SNL is with the, sometimes when those kind of things happen, we end up with the, you know, I use a drum cat because the live drums can be so loud, like they don't like that, the producers don't like the idea that, you know, the real drums are bleeding into.
Was that your idea, or was that?
No, it's funny because like all the guys in the band I think would rather it be real drums, and I think I would too, but then it's not about me and what the fuck I want, you know, that's for sure. And I can dig it where like, but you know, if you listen to old radio like Dean Martin or old TV shows, you know, like they had a live band in the studio, and it you know, it would just happen, you know. And but it does make sense from controlling the volume, you know, like if you've got somebody 500 yards away and the drums, all you're hearing is the room sound, like a Phil Spector record, you know, and then it's bleeding into the, because if the actors aren't on a handheld mic or a lavalier thing and there's just a boom overhead, you know, the drums are going to wipe out some of the dialogue, you know, so that's kind of what that thing is about. So anyway, that's the hardest part of the SNL thing, is kind of dealing with the live skits and stuff. And, you know, if somebody drops a line and being able to be flexible and react to that kind of stuff, that can be stressful. But Letterman's thing is almost like times 10 of that, because when you're subbing, like those guys have worked together as a unit for like, you know, 25, 30 years or whatever. And you know, there's a lot that, man, Paul does an incredible job. There's so much that he's dealing with. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched it and taken in, like, he actually has like these two mics. And one mic he's talking to the band, and the other mic is going to Letterman, you know, like, and going live to air. So like, and he likes to be spontaneous with some of the calls, like, you know, if he knows someone's coming out with a blue dress, let's say he might say Devil with a blue dress, but like in rehearsal it might have been some other song, or, you know, like he tries to be really topical about like what can we do that makes sense. And then if someone in an interview talks about, you know, peppermint candy, he might say peppermint twist, or, you know, I mean, these are like stupid exaggerations, but
no, I got you.
But so it's very on the fly, and there's no official drum book. See, like SNL has a book because it's like a 5-piece horn band, and so everything is like charted out, and there's like, it's kind of like tightened down in that way. Like there's, you know, like it used to be a lot crazier. You would just start shit and we'd just all go, and had that kind of energy, which was interesting and cool. But
that's gone. That's over.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a book.
There's still, you know, a lot of fire, and there was a book back then for stuff that we did. But I guess my point is like Letterman, there's not like they know so many songs, and it's not like Anton has everything there for a chart. Like if you're subbing, oh, no problem, okay, we're doing 25 or 6/4, and I sort of remember how that goes, that's right, yeah, oh, dig it, but oh my god, the bridge is you know, there's a break at the end of the, or something like that, you know what I mean? And I mean, the amount of preparation that I tried to pull together for sub, like they give you this list of songs and they say, well, just learn about 20 or 30 songs because you know, that's all we'll need to get through a show. But then, you know, I think I was like, oh shit, I better learn a lot of this other stuff in case Paul, you know, gets into wanting to do this stuff. At least, you know, so I like went crazy and tried to chart out all this, you know, but the charts are really simple. It's like form charts and then like breaks when they happen, just so I know, like, you know, dude looks like a lady, and then the bridge happens and it's an odd phrase, and like, you know, if he's gonna call that song, I'd like to have that together and not just blast through it, you know. Yeah. And he's got this incredible memory. Like we were doing one of the Stax things, you know, I mean, he's done so much stuff in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he said, "Hey man, there's no drum fills on the vamp out," you know, and I was playing. It was I mean something really simple like "Hold on, I'm coming," you know, and I was maybe just going da 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 da, where the fill is da 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 or something, you know, and he could actually sing to you the drum fill, and when it happened, and it's just it's wild. I mean, you got to respect the cat that has that kind of memory and grasp for the thing, and then you realize like, well, shit, then I should wipe my butt with, you know, so that's like. They know so many songs, they're so used to doing it as a unit, and then you're coming in and subbing, and as the drummer, you know, you have to play with conviction, you know. It's not like you can. So it's wild. And like I remember once we were doing, I've done it for a lot of times, and Paul forgot that they were going to do something like one of those things like letters, we've got letters, or something where there's a thing. Right. And he goes, oh shit, da da da. And I didn't know what da-da-da meant. I forgot, you know, he said. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, he goes, 3, 4. And I was like, fuck. I was thinking to myself, like, what are we doing? Is this like 3, 4? Is it a shuffle? Is it a straight A thing? So Right. But it was like fight or flight. So I was like, well, okay, fuck. I'm going to have to step on this shit and get down, you know. So 3, 4. And so like I crashed and played with conviction and played some kind of beat. But like it was just quarter note. So then it wouldn't be like the 8th note. I wouldn't be committing to an 8th note or a shuffle feel, you know. Yep. And it worked fine, you know, but it was like a heart attack moment in a way. Like, you know, you're on air and you don't know what's coming, and he hasn't told you because he kind of forgot, or it came up last minute, you know. But he's dealing with so much shit there, you know, with interacting with Letterman and trying to get the band. Yeah. So that's the hardest one, man. It's really hard, and I really respect Anton for keeping that thing together and going. Many years, you know, it's a lot of and subbing on it's really hard. So and then the Conan thing was a lot of fun. At the time when I was doing it, it was kind of, it wasn't as crazy as the Letterman thing. The Letterman thing is really like when you're done subbing on that, you really feel like a truck has run over you, you know.
You just want to come home and crawl into bed.
It's a bitch, man. And that theme, you know, it's got some odd bars and stuff, and you know. I'm pretty conscientious, like I'll try to go, even though I've done it, I must have done it over 10 times by now, and I'll still try to go and check out a show and how it is now and the theme, and the theme has this crazy turnaround where it goes into 7/8 and stuff. And so this last time I did it, which was in the end of June, Paul goes, so the theme has one beat less in it. And I'm like, and where? You know, nobody told me, and I tried to do it. I showed up the week before, and I taped the shit, and I go back and try to, you know, watch and see how Anton's playing everything, and I said, oh shit, really, wow, okay, and without trying to say nobody told me, just like and he's like, yeah, and then, you know, Will is real together and helpful, and he's like, yeah, it's where that 2-bar drum break is. It's now just a bar of 7, because there's a thing in the middle of the theme where the drums kind of do this step out thing for 2 bars, and I had made my own chart, you know, with my whole system, and because Paul's really particular about dun 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 dun. Like the notes that are like long and the ones that are short, like all this kind of stuff, the way you set it up, kind of like a big band thing. Sure. And so I have all these little things notated like through the years of doing it, like, okay, so this time he wants this kind of longer and this is like staccato, and then, you know, luckily I found this place where it was 1 beat shorter and was able to etch that in. But it's a jungle out there. Yeah. But no, it's a lot of fun, man, and I just feel thankful to be there and have a chance to do it, you know. So with the SNL thing, it's been such a blast, and I think it really opened up some doors. And then I started recording, you know. I met I had gone to school with Chris Bodie, you know, and he worked on this Brecker Brothers record, and I thought maybe we could just play like a snippet of thing, because it's an interesting session story where, like, the reason why I even got a chance to do it was they couldn't get the drummer who was doing it, who's like one of my heroes. I don't want to name that. And whoever that was, remember his name was, couldn't hear the song. Like, he wanted to play a lot of grace notes and kind of like it was a great idea, I thought, you know, but the producers anyway wanted it to have a lot of space to it, because like there was these programmed percussion things and little toms going on that were machined, but like they needed a real drummer to bring air to it and stuff. So I just thought this is one of the first things I got to do, sort of as record-wise, you know. So I'm just gonna play a snippet of it to try to explain the feel. Like, so it's kind of this slow thing, and so kind of moody and slow, and they wanted it to end up like that, which has a lot of space. And I think the way it was going was there was a lot of where the snare drum was filling in all these different things in grace notes, you know. And it was really, you know, it was a thrill to get to play with the Brecker Brothers and actually end up on this record. It ended up getting a Grammy, you know, and stuff. And it was like, oh my God, you know, that was incredible. But it was a real learning lesson about, you know, being able to take direction, sort of like, even if you have a strong conviction about what you think is right or what you want to do, that it's not about you, it's about, and even if what the other people want sucks, it's kind of like if you're called in as a sideman to do sessions, you know, you really got to have the temperament to sort of go with that, you know, and where you draw those lines. And I think one of the biggest things for us as freelancers is the ability to let go. You know, it's just a whole bridge to cross, because music means so much to us and our hearts, and you're so passionate about it. And then, you know, there's situations where you're in these things, and what the person wants to go down is completely maybe different than what you think should go down or something, you know. And ability to just let go. Like another example kind of that is this there's a Springsteen song where I was gonna play that's funny along these lines too. And this is a really simple track. It's called Happy. It's on this box. So a lot of space, and I had been doing like these singer-songwriter things, and I had this part that I just love for this song, because it was like just Charleston with the bass drum, you know, and this easy like lope. And man, remember when Remo was making those drums? I think he still do it. They had like conga heads, but they were snare drums. Yeah. And then all these different things. I had all these different brushes, and I'd been doing all these like unplugged singer-songwriter gigs and stuff. And it's wild how I even got this gig to even get a chance to record with Bruce. Was like some crazy thing where I had done one of these sessions out in Brooklyn where it was like, hey, can you come? We're gonna do 10 songs in one day, you know? And it was like, okay, yeah. And the assistant at that session's brother was the assistant at the Bruce session or something, and somehow the producer had heard this stuff, and then he thought that he reacted to one of the drum tracks on this, which is so crazy to get a gig with such a major artist through some kind of backdoor way like that. But that's interesting what you're talking about, you know, in New York, you never know what's
you
gonna
never
happen.
know who walks in the room, as
so,
we were saying.
So anyway, so this feel, you know, which is like really, really straight ahead, and I had this part that I was in love with. Like it was this feathered kind of thing where it was like, it kind of had a lope to it, and I had like one of those Ringo conga drums that was supposed to be all hip and shit and different, and like I had it muted just perfectly where it had this heartbeat warmth to it, but it had this like threaded ghost notey thing that was so soulful and shit. And man, I love this part. I thought, oh man, I get this chance to record with Bruce, and if I could do one of these cool ass parts, you know. And he kissed, I don't know, I think I'm hearing cross stick, you know. And it was like, man, it was the most simple, basic part, you know. And it was like, oh no, this is, you know, we're gonna end up doing the most, I mean, you know, what somebody might say is the most pedestrian.
Right, you're thinking generic and all this. Right.
And I thought, oh, I was gonna say, hey Bruce, man, can't you tell I'm trying to do some hip shit here, man? Come on, man. Whose record is this anyway? You're fucking trying to do something, man.
You called me, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good point, man. Because some people, I've heard famous stories, man, where the guy says, hey, look, I get called to do what I do, and, you know...
You done hired the hitmaker.
Yeah, amen.
He's got a photo of Bernard Purdy up there, folks.
No, and I love Bernard so much. I love him so much. Oh, my God, I love him. But, you know, it's just interesting, this idea of, you know...
Yeah.
Being able to let go, you know, and do it. Cast me.
You have your idea, and then there's their idea.
Yeah.
And
And I think when you're a producer, like there's times when you want a specific thing and someone to come in with a real strong point of view, and then there's other times where I think people need to have people that they know will do what they need them to do too. It's a really interesting balance, and sometimes you need somebody that can do both.
By the way, when did this happen? I mean, just to jump, I didn't mention this earlier. We are in Shawn's home, and he's got the home studio. The kid's set up in here. Everything's ready to go. Shawn obviously does a lot here. When did this happen for you? This apartment, this whole situation.
Well, I guess the more start in the SNL thing. It's funny. We never know when it's done if we're going to be back next year.
You were hungry. You were living in Spanish Harlem. Then you were on 14th Street.
Yeah.
You were moving the car.
Right.
Alternate side parking every day.
Yeah.
SNL. It's good money.
Yeah.
I mean, life changed.
Right. So, I was living with my girlfriend in Chelsea at her place, and then I sublitted my place on 14th Street because I never knew if the gig was going to end. I thought, man, if the gig ends, shit, I can back on 14th Street with cats doodling in the lobby, Shit. Ow! I tried to just save my bread through all of that, and then she found this place, and it was just the one side, which was a small 2-bedroom, and we ended up buying it, and it really was. I love this area. This neighborhood is so great. It's like Central Village. I just love it.
Right.
And then the guy that lived on this side, this was a 1-bedroom apartment. So he ended up. That was that didn't happen until like 5 years later. So all of this didn't happen until the early 2000s.
Got it.
But it's so lucky to be able to combine two places, and then I took the spare bedroom and then floated it and kind of built a room within a room, and it was kind of a real dice roll. It was like, people were like, man, you're not going to be able to record drums in there because it's going to make too much noise. Like, first of all, it's a post-war building, which is like, the walls aren't as thick. Like, pre-war is this, like, I guess, construction code where everything was like much thicker, and like, so post-war buildings aren't as like thick and crazy and high ceilings and stuff. So we kind of floated this floor and the ceiling. It's sort of a room within a room, and it's on pucks and all these different isolation things. And then the drums are on this riser, which is like this industrial spring riser, because on the first floated floor, people were complaining downstairs. It's like, okay, well, what if I put another riser where this isn't even touching the other floor? That's going to work, right? And so it's on these heavy-duty industrial springs. But, man, I tell you, the idea of trying to get something 100% soundproofed is almost an impossibility. Like, even, if you go to those, like, studios that have lead walls and stuff, sometimes you'll still hear, like, boom, boom, like the low end. The low end thing is the really hardest thing. So I think, like, that downstairs, there can be an issue. So I try to be cool and only do
they work during the day? I mean, is it like...
Yeah, there were people before these people that it was a little bit more of an issue. And I remember going to the Musicians Union and seeing, oh man, what's the legal precedent on this? Because I just dropped a lot of money on this, and am I going to have to tear it all up? And I'd kind of committed to, like, well, even if I'm just here with my little cassette player and a practice pad, at least it's kind of, when I shut the door, to be more quiet or some shit. And so... the legal precedent was really interesting because it's like, as a musician, you're allowed to like play trumpet and snare drum, and like there was a cat that was a free jazz dude that used to have like rehearsals with his band or something in his apartment. It's like, I can only imagine, like, Eric Dolphy and all those cats, Archie Shepp going crazy with Elvin, rehearsing in an apartment or something. And like legally, I think you can do that. Like, you can play trumpet, but you have to do it within a certain amount of time, and maybe
hours.
Yeah, there's that, and the time. Like, you can't do it at 2 a.m, but you can do it up to, like, say 6 p.m. Or each building has different rules. Right. The thing where it gets tricky is if they feel like you're up here, like teaching, or if you're up here like doing tracks and getting paid. The moment like something gets into a commercial enterprise, I think that's when it gets tricky. With the whole rules. But like, the noise code in New York is so interesting that even if you open up the windows and take one of those noise measurer zappy dappies, it like the external noise of just the buses going by and the air conditioner vents on the building and stuff kind of like go above code, so it's like this interesting catch-22. But man, it's been going great here. I love it. To be able to walk into this room and record, I mean, wow.
I mean, you do it all here, right?
Yeah, it's worked out.
Do you even go to studios anymore, really?
Yeah, no,
there's
still an tinkly.
Yeah, right.
Tiny peace stream.
once every 3 months, right?
I mean, it's rough. All the studios, there's only a couple left. Like Avatar, which was Power Station, is still here.
Yeah.
Right Track, which is now called MSR, like that's still here. And Sear Sound is still here with all the vintage mics and all the cool stuff. And there's some other rooms, but there used to be Clinton, there used to be the Hit Factory, there used to be Sony Studios, there was all these classic rooms, And everything, like, the Hit Factory is a condo now. It's like the Hit Factory condos and stuff. And so, anyway, but I tell you, like, getting good drum sounds in a home recording studio was sort of the last rainbow to cross, for like cats were already doing guitars and stuff. And so it's amazing though in the year 2013 what you can kind of do, because you can simulate like bigger rooms with room reverbs and all this different shit. And man, I tell you, anybody listening that's into it, it's possible, man. You can do it. Like I mean, I had a lot of help. I paid like great engineers to come over and help me that I've worked with, like Kevin Killen, the guy who did Peter Gabriel's Soul record, like to know these guys and to have them come over and say, hey man, do this, try this is working. And and for them to get the stems of what you're doing and say, hey man, this is great. We're making this happen. This works. It sounds like it's cool. And to have it end up, on a record and it's really rewarding. And it's really been a learning experience. And it's possible, man, to do it. If you have the dream to do that, you can get good sounds at home in your closet.
And you do it all, but like we were saying. I mean, now stuff's just sent to you.
Yeah, that whole thing that everybody's kind of doing with the home studio.
Like you don't even meet these people, right?
Yeah, or sometimes I know them, and it's funny. I was listening earlier to the podcast. With Gadsden, and he was talking about the thing about doing that kind of stuff, and sometimes people don't know what they want, and the communication thing. I mean, in the studio in general, like being people skills and communication is so huge with working, and to be able to try to get a sense of, and have a communication back and forth. It's so amazing, and it can be tough if they're not in the room with you, because sometimes people don't know what they want, and then other times people are very clear, and so it's tricky, but it's that way in the real studio too sometimes, so and it does make
this is the kit for everything. This does everything.
Yeah, well, I have it kind of set up ready to go. If there was something, I've swapped things out, definitely pieces out if something needs to be different. Like there was a jazz thing I did, and these kind of toms are set up now. It's like a 13 and a 16, kind of like they got the T-towel thing going on for a muted thing. But there was a thing where I had to do a more jazz thing, and I threw on like a 12 and a 14. You know what I mean?
Okay, you switch it up.
Yeah, so I
but mostly the 22, 13, 16?
That's a 24 there, yeah.
That's a 24?
I know, it's a trip, yeah.
See, folks, I can't even.
No, it's tough to. I couldn't recognize that. But that's 24, 13, and 16.
What do you use on the show? 22?
Yeah, forever I used the 22 by 18. That DW thing with the extra length is supposed to give the bottom end, Mm-hmm. And then this last 2 years, I finally tried a 24. And it's 15 inches deep, and I dug it. I really dug it. It's just a trip because of the way I set at the drums. I sit kind of high, so
it almost looks like a 20 the way you sit.
Yeah,
like it's so low, man. Seriously,
I know, I'm crazy. It's crazy. So that thing that the 24 kind of, it's hard for me to play a 24 with a 6.5 inch drum, and so I went to a 15 inch snare by 5, which I ended up loving that solid thing that DW made. John Good and DW, they really made his passion and commitment for drums, and he's really wild.
The Wood Whisperer.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of from that camp of, it's the drummer and his touch and his tuning and the heads and all that. I really am a believer in that too. Like, give a great drummer any kind of drums and he's going to be able to get down.
That's right.
But by the same token, I really do respect John's passion and commitment. That company and the hardware is so great and strong, and the fact that you can get like something that with the die-cast rims, like the Gretsch kind of shell, or they do the Radio King thing with the different edges and their classic series and I mean, it's just wild, all the options and the ability to kind of like get what you want and the custom ability of it. I just think they do an incredible job, you know. Yeah. And I'm not really a guy that pounds his chest about gear, but I am impressed with John and his commitment to the whole thing, you know. So keeping moving on, this is going forever, is it? But I can keep going if you want to keep going. I don't know, man. I should shut up. But, you know, I got to meet Phil Ramone and start working for him, and that was really amazing. I met this guy, John Leventhal, is a great producer. He's made Roseanne. I was trying to think if there were a couple other stories about tracks that would be insightful. Like, you know, I was lucky enough to work and record with Sheryl Crow for a second. And this is an interesting story about this.
How'd that happen, by the way? How'd you get the Sheryl Crow gig?
I met her. I played this thing at the White House in the 90s that she was a part of. It's like kind of a house band situation.
Okay.
And this was like one of those things where it was when Bill was president. It was right when the Monica Lewinsky thing came out. And it was cold-blooded, man. Hillary and them on stage together, and you could tell Hillary was pissed, man. Motherfucker.
You could feel it.
Yeah. And like I was at the drums, I was like, woo, this is chilly, man. So we kind of met there, and she's from Missouri, and I'm from Missouri, and, you know, she's great. I love her. She's really interesting because she was a sideman before being an artist, so I think she has a real, you know, understanding of that thing versus like an artist that just kind of grew up being a princess forever. And
she was playing with Brian McLeod at that point. Is that
back then? I wonder if it had. Yeah, she was recording with him a lot, you know. And then, but Jim Bogier's great drummer. He was doing a lot of the road stuff, and then I did these couple Bruce tracks and got to go to the farm once at a party, and she was there, and we talked about that I was from Warrensburg and she's from down near Cape Girardeau.
That helps, no?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. I mean,
yeah. And then I think I was lucky enough to play on this Sean Colvin record that got Record of the Year.
Sean Colvin, yeah.
And Song of the Year in '97. And, you know, I think she was a fan of that thing and stuff. But what I was going to play was a little bit of this. This is an interesting session story.
It's all right, a little electronic.
So this is actually a demo of a song, right? The guitarist he put together, Peter Stroud, great guitarist. So, you know, drum machine thing. We started playing this thing, and like we were in a garage and kind of stonesy and like, you know, just rocking it out in an organic way. And she's like, man, this sounds so tired. This is so... just seems pedestrian somehow. What can we do about it? You know, and then she said, hey man, do you know Jerry Marotta? I said, yeah, I'm a huge fan of his.
Jerry.
And you know, it's interesting, that thing about, you know, coming up with your own sound, because I would say that Jerry has this, a real cool personality and a stance, you know. But I remember talking about that and him saying, well, you know, it's wild. You almost have to be in situations where you're able to, for that to happen. It goes, you know, like with Peter Gabriel, and they made the decision not to use the cymbals on the tracks and stuff, and it ended up being a real statement. One of those early records that Jerry did, and like I remember seeing Jerry do all this cool creative stuff. But like, it's wild. You have to kind of be in the context to make that statement. Like you probably couldn't get away with that on, let's say, Jessica Simpson pop track, you know.
Right,
but if you're doing some cool left field thing, maybe those kind of. It was just interesting. Like I think, if you're freelancing, it's great to have a sound and develop that, and it's wild how you almost have to be in situations that can allow that to come through, you know. Like, you know, all the great personalities on drums, not all of them, but a lot of them, you know, like Keith Moon and like Stuart Copeland, all those things were developed in the context sometimes of just like one band, you know. Where it's interesting, cats who were able to make that happen by freelancing a lot, you know, like that you can identify Steve Gadd's thing, you know, whether he's playing with Paul Simon or Chick Corea, you know, is really interesting to me. That, you know, from his sound and his touch and the language that he uses, that it translates all these different styles, you know. So anyway, she said about Jerry Marotta, what I was getting to was, yeah, well, do you have something that's more like, what if we don't play like, you know, straight ahead rock and roll drum kit? Do you have those set of Dowse drums, you know? And I said, oh yeah, what are those again? Those are those Indian drums, right? And she said, yeah, he had a whole kit of those, you know. And I'd seen him play those in New York, and they were so hip. And I think Matt Chamberlain has those things, a lot of cats, you know. And it's the Indian Dallas, Arizona, like
Sure.
they make those drums right, the skinhead, and you have to use a hair dryer to like tune the thing, And I'm one of these cats that brings in a lot of snare drums because people like choices sometimes, and it's kind of overkill. I do bring in a lot of shit, but I didn't have a damn Taos drum kit, So I said, oh man, well, give me half hour in the corner. Let me see if I can come up with some shit, And she played a snippet of this thing that was from South America, and it had different, sordos, and it was like really foggy and gauzy. I think it was Gomez. It was a Gomez track. And anyway, long story short, it was interesting how what ended up on the record was this whole thing, again, like instead of playing, here's the demo. It ended up with all this kinky, like...
Right.
Trippy kind of, and this is when the loop thing was sort of going on, and people were mixing loops with drums a lot, and it was just wild how that kind of the fact that I had sort of that in my back pocket helped me stay on the gig versus if I had just been an organic drummer, and I started to hit this wall with recording where it was like no matter how much hip shit I collect organically, there's a lot of amazing music being made out there with like machines and different things like that, and I felt like I really had to start getting in touch with being able to bring some of that to the table, and it's just wild how that's kind of a whole different muscle than learning to play in 13/8 and stuff. And,
absolutely. If you don't mind.
You dig? Oh yes, refill. We are
We're having fun with
train.
tequila tonight.
Ow!
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of some more fun stories. James Brown, I got to play with him at Pavarotti. Well, I used to do these Pavarotti and friend things. Steve Gadd was doing it, and then he had to go on tour with somebody.
Did Steve call you?
No, it was one of these Phil Ramone things.
Okay, Phil Ramone.
Yeah.
How did you get to know Phil Ramone?
It was kind of word of mouth, and his assistant, this girl, I knew her, and then the musician, he was always looking for young cats that were available and that were good and coming up, and maybe we had done something for the Spice Girls or Elton John or something crazy like that, and it ended up going good. And I always understood Phil, how he communicated. It was interesting that one guy said about working with Phil, he goes, oh fuck man, it was weird, I didn't understand what he wanted, and I finally said to him, so well, what are you hearing on this, and I just thought when I heard that, I thought, oh shit, that's like so not, like Phil was coming from this older school thing sometimes, like he would cast people and put them in a room, and it was this idea of like what would kind of come out of the soil from that. And like sometimes he had very specific ideas and other times he didn't, and when he didn't though, the idea of shining the light on him about it, like especially in front of the artist or something, that if he didn't have, it's better just, it's wild, knowing when to shut the fuck up, and knowing when to say some shit, knowing when to have an idea. I remember somebody said, Springsteen said, I hate a motherfucker with a good idea, or something. And then the guy was telling me a story, and he's like, what did he mean by that? Well, that's so wild, And it's this concept of like, if the artist is still trying to get his vision laid out, like what is he hearing? What does he need to hear? What's part of his process? Like respecting that journey before you like start jumping in with your shit, or like if it's stalled out and you need to come up with an idea, knowing how to like read all those kind of situations, So anyway, Phil was great, and we're there in Italy, and this crazy gig. It was Pavarotti and friends, and it would be like B.B. King and then Eric Clapton and Bono and like, man, but then also like the Spice Girls, and then there would be like Lou Reed, and it was just all over the map, and the whole deal was Pavarotti was going to do this thing with the pop stars, and then the pop star would do his own song. And so James Brown is on one of them this year, and they decided they're going to do It's a Man's World together. And it's on YouTube. I guess some people think it's such a trip, and so he brought his own band though, so it was like, but we had rehearsed with the orchestra because there was an orchestra there, and it's like, man, what, well, I want my band to play it or something. And they had a house band, and the people that were in charge kind of said, well, these guys rehearsed the band and stuff. Well, okay, then I'll listen to them, but I don't know, So it was sort of like auditioning for Chains on the spot, And luckily we passed the audition and stuff, but it was a trip. He was a blast, and Pavo was kind of scared. Pavo for short.
Pavo, I like that.
But he never said boo to any of us, really. But I like to imagine that I was calling him Pavo.
Yeah.
But man, it would be so hot, and he'd have all these scarves around his neck, and they always had like some kind of theme, like rescue the children of Guatemala, or like Kosovo, and like they'd have this little children's choir and stuff. But man, in Italy, they are so mean to kids, like, because it's all these 4 to 7-year-old kids, and they would never pay attention. And the Italian lady that was running the choir, I mean, she'd go and shake the shit out of these kids, and then Pavo would turn around, like he'd want them to sing louder, and he'd turn around and go, "Arrgh!" to them, man. And it was scary, man.
Scaring children.
I know, it scared me, Pavo, baby. But he had his own little conductor, and the conductor would tell him when to come in and stuff. And it was interesting, B.B. King, when he had to do something that wasn't his own, he had his own little conductor too, I think that's when you get to a good level, is
you have your
own conductor.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Oh, shit.
What's the biggest song you hear? Like, you're out and about, you're just out, you're in the car, you're in the store, whatever, and you go, hey, there I am.
Well, I guess when I first started hearing that Coleman song was the first thing that was a hit, and then when I got those Grammys, that was like a thrill, to hear that on the radio. And then, let's see, that song Behind These Hazel Eyes, here's a snippet of that. Let's see, this was a hit. That's a wild story about that. That's one of those Kelly Clarkson songs.
Right.
We flew over to Stockholm because it was Max Martin and Dr. Luke was. But I thought, we're going to this really, and we ended up going to this like kind of, because his main studio was being worked on, So like, the drums were kind of rental drums, but in Stockholm, and they were okay, but they weren't super together. And the bass drum was like a smaller bass drum. It was so interesting playing that kind of heavy rock track with like almost like a jazzy
was it
kid.
A 20 or 18?
It was a 20, yeah.
Yeah.
And but it's interesting with all the post-production things people can do sonically,
It doesn't matter, does it?
It's wild, man. I like to think that it does, and it depends on the context. Like, with organic tracks and stuff like that, you can't probably as easily replace some kind of really cool Jay Belrose brushy,
right.
thing. But when it comes to like, Tom Lord Alge mixing the thing for radio and it going through like 20 different compressors for the attack and then the meat of the snare and then this thing and then, I've got those tools like Drumagog, and I sit there and I'm just amazed, like, wow, so okay, I have the snare here, but if I want to add like a 60s, and it says 60s towel muted Black Beauty, and then like you can pitch the shit out of it, you can blend it in as much as you want, and then if the bass drum needs more bottom, they've got 500 samples of that to blend in.
That's what I'm saying, like wow. You can use an 18, a 20,
yeah,
it doesn't really matter, right? At this point.
Yes,
Amen.
I hear you.
Amen. These are beautiful, by the way.
Yeah.
Shawn's drums here.
Yeah. Wow, I'm trying to think of some more fun stories. Another Phil Ramone story. We did this thing with Liza Minnelli at her apartment, and man, that was out. Like it was supposed to be a reality show, but before they had started to really get going, and she was married to that crazy dude.
I remember that. Yeah.
What was his? Yeah.
David. Yeah.
So it was like in Liza's apartment on the Upper East Side. We load in. And they had like Ray Charles was there. It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna play with Ray Charles. And then it was like Anastasia or some chick from, and then Deborah Cox and like some people that were sort of had some hits at those time, I guess. And this guy wouldn't let us have anything to drink or any water. And like my stick bag, I had a stick bag and it was like up against the wall, but he would take paper and put it between the stick bag and the wall because he was so like finicky about this thing. So man, to have a drink of water, I had to go into the bathroom and put my mouth under the sink just because we were there like 10 hours and the cab wouldn't let us have any. It was so funny.
Literally, you said.
And then Phil asked him once, said, hey, well, can the guys have some water or something here? And like, well, I'm afraid it will spill, He said, well, we'll make it cleaner or something. But man, I was literally in Liza's bathroom drinking water
out of the faucet. Mouth to faucet, folks.
That was tough, man.
Liza.
And then, I'm trying to think, another cool Ray Charles story was that I got to play on one of those tracks that was on that Genius Loves Company thing. It was him with Van Morrison, and it was a live thing. And this was kind of right before Ray died, and his health seemed not together. And then Van, I think, loved Ray, of course, and was really honored. But then Ray showed up and didn't really have the tune together, but then he was in ill health, and so I think Van was pissed off that Ray didn't really know the song, so everybody was kind of pissed off. So we did this run through, and I guess it was one of those things. Phil was always smart about always having the tape rolling, so we do the run through, and he's taping it earlier in the day, and then later that night, we come back, and Ray just misses everything, like forgets the bridge, and the whole thing is kind of a disaster, but somehow they pieced it together from that performance and the afternoon thing, and it came together, and it was on that record that, I think that got some Grammys or something like that.
Now what's going on with House of Diablo? Let's talk about that for a minute.
A friend of mine that is such a great musician, Brian Mitchell, and he plays a lot he's done a lot of stuff, but he was in Levon Helm's band for a long time, and that's a great hang.
Working with Larry Campbell and all that.
Yeah. We should talk about the Ramble a little bit. So, it was kind of I was in this band, Mojo Mancini, which is another really interesting band, and that guy, John Leventhal, the producer, and Rick DePaffy and Conrad Kors is based with Tony Garnier from Bob Dylan's band. Actually
Tony,
played.
Man.
Yeah, he was.
George Riccelli?
Yeah, he's so great. Yeah, love him.
Yeah.
And Tony's one of the most. I just got to play with Tony with James Burton, the Elvis original.
Yeah, of course,
Tiger,
man, of course.
That was best. Tony sounds so amazing on that music. But Tony's a really rare.
Tony's a badass
musician with his thing on the acoustic bass and the electric. But like a lot of rock players, they play acoustic, but they don't have it's like it's in the closet and they pull it out and they do some unplugged gigs with it. But
not Tony.
Yeah, he's really special, and that rockabilly thing he's so good at. He's special musician, man. So this thing, was kind of an outgrowth of the Mojo Mancini band for me and Brian to just freak out a little more and, go crazy on our own. And, then I got asked to do these Modern Drummer festivals, a couple, and that was kind of scary. Like, oh shit, because I didn't know what I was bringing. I've always been a little insecure about what, in the drum community, because I'm not really a super blazing. And put together this group of cats that we played together a lot, and we called it that, the House. It was kind of outgrowth of that. But we did a record, me and Brian together, and you can get. I think it's on iTunes, and I have a website up that people can order it from, and I'm proud of it. It was fun, and it kind of. It's like the rootsy thing mixed with the hip hop trippy thing, and kind of abstract, but still kind of grooving and swampy and trippy, so it's a lot of fun. We've been kind of like in the shed just trying to get our shit together, and because it's tough, it's funny. I was listening to Zach's interview and Mark, and I love how committed they are to like their thing, and we tried to go out and do some gigs, and it's tough getting people out, and I have a hard time like kind of promoting myself in that way, like I'm not even on Facebook.
I was gonna ask you about that. No Facebook, no Twitter.
I know.
What's up?
I know. I gotta get my shit together, man.
Do you want to do it, or you just know you're gonna stay off?
I felt like I had enough hard time like just dealing with my emails, and keeping that together, and then the Twitter thing, like. I mean, I know I've been blabbing like nonstop on this thing, but like I kind of have a hard time.
You have a very quiet online presence.
Well, I want what I do to sort of speak for itself, sort of, versus like, here I am with Steven Tyler of Aerosmith at the Rock and Roll, the Songwriters Hall of Fame. I'm not that guy that runs up and gets my picture taken with the cats, but I, want to do a great job and be. It's not like I'm a recluse and like hiding under a blanket. I'm not trying to say that, but I have a hard time wanting to. I'd rather just my actions speak for themselves, and like if it's good and it works, and I've been working, and this is why, and it's as opposed to like see what I did, here I am,
Sure.
So the Twitter thing, I haven't quite figured out how, and then the Facebook thing just started to feel like, I don't know, a time sink, and like, okay, this cat had that for breakfast, and that's great. I mean, I do think it's great for promoting, for promoting gigs. I do think it's a great promotional tool, I guess I've been running around.
There's problems, definitely. There is problems with that, yeah.
I mean, I've been running around, and if you're freelancing a lot and trying to take a lot of pride in doing a great job in all those different situations, and I love working on that stuff and music and tracks.
But does that mean, by the way, I'm just curious. So you don't look at Facebook, you don't look at Twitter.
I guess sometimes I'll try to look at little tweets.
You just look.
Of some, or, and I've heard like, oh man, you should check out this guy's tweet.
Get a taste of what's going on.
And I feel like
you're just like, this is fucking stupid, right?
Well, no, I try not. I don't know because I haven't even been able to really take it in, and I bet there's some hip shit out there to dig on. Like a friend of mine said, man, Matt Chamberlain has a really cool tweet thing. You should check it out, or his Facebook feed. And I was like, I would love to see that because I'm a big fan, And I bet there's some hip shit happening on that.
Right.
Damn it, I got to get it together.
So it's beautiful.
Yeah, but I think it has to do with I'm uncomfortable kind of being the cat that here's
self-promoting.
Here I am at the White House.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I'd rather just have done it and done a good job and let it speak for itself or something. Yeah.
I got you.
But with that in mind, I did get to go to Paul McCartney's studio. I can tell this. I'm trying to think of some more fun stories.
Now, just be honest, Shawn. Did you smoke a J with Paul McCartney?
No, but that sounds fun. Well, it was actually for his son James and through this producer David Kahn, who was really great, and we worked together. We got to like Regina Spektor and Ingrid Michaelson and different things. And so he took me over there, and that was such a thrill to work at that studio. And James's son is really talented. And there was one point where Paul started playing this Beatles song on the piano. I was sitting there, and then James is there, and he goes, well, there's one more song that's kind of in the can that hasn't been released, and he started to play. And I was like, oh shit, I'm hearing this like unreleased Beatles song. And then James was like, yeah, I really like when you sing John's parts. And it was kind of like, oh shit, And but that was a lot of fun, man. And he's so nice. He gives you this little book that's signed by everybody at the studio, and it's like this little bird and in a nest, and it's some kind of like cartoon little drawings and stuff. And that was really a thrill to get to go over there and be in the studio, when he was there. And that Levon thing, that Ramble thing you're talking about, Larry Campbell and those guys, that's been such a blast. I got to do some of that stuff. Levon was so welcoming to, Rich talked about doing some of the gigs, and then Tony Leone from Ola Bell did, his great drummer, and this guy Justin, who was like kind of an engineer, but he would play drums with Levon some, and he's doing some of it now. And so this Saturday, going up and doing a kind of a double drum thing, because Amy, his daughter, was saying, well, we want to keep this going, but now that Levon's passed, if it's just one guy, but if it's two guys, sometimes it makes it more about the drums and celebrating the drums as opposed to just one guy doing this. So she had an interesting sense of vision about that was cool. I guess we're doing this thing Saturday with William Bell, the legendary R&B guy, and then the next weekend there's some drum festival that we're doing, and I think DJnet's on the bill, and so that'd be wild,
Jesus.
But man, being around Levon and his spirit, and he was so positive and inclusive and so much love and charisma,
I just want to say one thing. I'm going to throw this out to you. When I interviewed Jojo Mayer, before we started recording, he said, all the work in New York goes to Shawn Pelton. That?
Oh, man. Wow.
Rich Redmond said, in New York City, it's our buddy Shawn Pelton.
Oh, man.
I mean, so many cats have mentioned you as the guy, in this town. So...
Well, wow. I mean, it's such an honor when people say something like that unsolicited, and
you know what I'm saying? Like, they're just saying it off the record, and I'm saying it now on the record. I'm putting it on the record, but they said it off the record.
Well, I really is an honor that they said that, and I think what maybe a message to the drumming cats that are listening is hey, you don't have to have super duper choppity chippities to make a living and to work. And you know, I've vested. I mean, I love drums and drummers, and my whole life I've given to this thing. But the thing that I've kind of responded to and that's made the most sense to me is sort of like, you know, what's a great feel and have send the music thing and having the big picture and you know, like when the James Gadsden thing I was listening to earlier, and I went back and listened to the Dance Machine, and then that Dyke and the Blaze, or something, that one other track that he played and you guys were talking about, I listened to it, and it's like, man, what is so fucking feels so good, you know. And like I've always been drawn to that magic of Cat. Like when I go see Bernard Purdie, and it's like I just sit there and I'm just smiling the whole damn time, and Purdie's just doing this shit that it just feels so fucking good, man. And like I love, like, and his concept, like maybe one of his videos, like he's playing and he's doing that pony thing on the hi-hat. And then he says, and then I played a drum fill, and then all it was taking and moving that rhythm over to the high top. And it was like, fuck, it just makes so much sense about like keeping this thing going and making the walls sweat, the feel of it, and like, you know, supporting the song. And oh fuck,
yeah, man, I know.
You know, Bernard, I just love, and he's like this happy shit, man, and he's got so much personality and there's so much charisma. I love drummers. I love that. I love drummers with attitude and style and personality. You know, I love that Roy Haynes is just such a bad motherfucker. You know, and that I remember Charlie Watts reading in interviews. He was like, "Yeah, man, we're just with the thing with Roy Haynes, and I just the baddest motherfucker." You know, I love drum. You know,
yeah,
I love that. I love that part. But Purdie, fuck, man. You know those cats that. So I guess the thing is the drumming world that you can survive, and you know there's always going to be a market, I think, for players that know how to play songs and that can get along with people and be positive and have a great feel and be about the song and the whole thing and have an instinct for parts, you know, knowing when to shut the fuck up, know when to have a great idea, all of that. Ow!
Shawn, that's where we fucking end it right there.
Ow! Clink the glass. Let's clink the glass.
Clink the glass.
Yeah, man. I don't even know which one I like better. Tequila. Yeah. Oh. All right, hey man. Listen, the things you're doing with these people, I'm telling you, you're gonna go on the space capsule.
Send it up with Chuck Berry. Right? Send it up there with.
No, but Library of Congress. I mean, to have Hal Blaine talk about all those stories.
That's some history, right?
And these guys.
I can't even take credit at this point. It's like, it's out of my hands. This belongs to the people.
It's so deep because
this belongs to the people.
Well, hey, thanks to you for pursuing it and you know, to have everybody's insights in this way. And it's so much, you know, when you read an interview, you don't really hear a person's inflection behind some of the stuff. You know, you're capturing all these things with these legendary cats. It's just, man. So we thank you. The drumming community thanks you. Eh? Can I get another clink? Ow! Ow! All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Shawn.
Dig it.
I did that. What? Do it.